Chapter 1632. Yi Xian knew very well that with his current strength he could not fight against the Void Tribe at all. Acting recklessly would only send more people to their deaths. Moreover, his intuition told him that there must be a stronger powerhouse behind the Void Tribe. That was because the Void Tribe was backed by the laws of the universe. The assassins who stopped Little Mu earlier were nurtured by the laws of the universe. The laws of the universe must have nurtured transcendent powerhouses, and there were definitely many of them. After Yi Xian and Little Mu left, the Earth Spirit clan began to speed up the construction of the world's #1 armor. At that moment they also knew about the existence of the Void Tribe. The Void Tribe's target was not just the Undying Emperor clan and the Fifth Dimension, but the entire universe. The Void Tribe would not let go of anything that they could devour. The Earth Spirit clan was also in danger. In order to build the world's #1 armor, the Earth Spirit clan could be said to have used all the power of the clan, including all the top-grade materials that the Earth Spirit clan had collected in history. The destruction of the War God's armor was extremely embarrassing for the Earth Spirit clan. The ultimate treasure of the Earth Spirit clan was smashed into pieces by a single punch. It was too embarrassing. Therefore, in order to build the world's #1 armor, the Earth Spirit clan could be said to have used all the top-grade materials of the Earth Spirit clan. Not only that, but in order to build the world's #1 armor, the Earth Spirit clan even invited some ancestors of the Earth Spirit clan. Little Mu brought Yi Xian to an unknown sea. In this endless sea there was a small island. When they landed on the island, Yi Xian saw the tree in his memory. The tree stood in the middle of the island, surrounded by endless sea. Yi Xian walked to the tree. At that moment there was no one under the tree. At the side, Xiao Mu looked around with tears in his eyes. This was the happiest place she had ever been. Now everything was the same, but the people had changed. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Why was God Yi killed by the laws of the universe back then? He had been thinking about this question. However, he could not understand it no matter how he thought about it. Logically speaking, God Yi could create the laws of the universe, so his strength must have far surpassed the laws of the universe. How could he be killed by his own creation? Could there be an enemy? At this point, Yi Xian raised his head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. There were 3 possibilities for God Yi's fall. The first possibility was that God Yi was really killed by the universal laws. The universal laws were superior to the universal laws. They didn't want to be controlled by God Yi, so they killed God Yi. The second possibility was that God Yi had some sinister plot and took the initiative to reincarnate. The third possibility was that there was a powerful external enemy who joined forces with the universal laws to kill God Yi. All 3 possibilities were possible. Since God Yi could create the law of the universe, he must be able to create something else. At this thought, Yi Xian opened his eyes and looked around. However, there was nothing but seawater around him. At this moment, footsteps sounded behind them. Xiao Mu turned around abruptly and saw a woman in a white dress walking towards her slowly. Seeing this woman in white, Xiao Mu's expression turned extremely solemn. Of course she knew this woman. Daoist, the first law of the universe. Yi Xian knew this woman as well. She was Daoist who loved to read books. Daoist looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Should I call you Yi Xian or God Yi? Yi Xian replied, Yi Xian. Daoist smiled. That's true. Now, Green City Yi Clan Ancestral Temple. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as the crown prince shall be removed and Yi Lang shall take over. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a young man with a faint smile on his face. That person was none other than Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a timid voice was suddenly heard in the ancestral temple. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. The little girl's name was Yi Ling. She was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl named Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral temple and said timidly, Grand Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince. Why did you cripple him? The Grand Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a family matter. Why are you interrupting? Leave. Yiling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the Grand Elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral temple. She bowed to the elders on both sides and said, "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan for the rights to the mine. He is fighting for the clan and his life is uncertain. Yet the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair." Impudent. The Grand Elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new crown prince Yilang suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The Grand Elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yiling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yilang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master Yilang inherits the position of crown prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yiling's face. Slap. A crisp slap was heard. Yiling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She only covered her cheek tightly. Yilang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard quickly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yilang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply. "Subordinate will go through fire and water for the crown prince. I'm willing to risk my life for you." Yilang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yilang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yilang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man wore a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Zhou Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Zhou Xian, Yilang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes. His face was dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Zhou Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yiling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Zhou Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yilang and was about to speak. At this moment, Zhou Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Zhou Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt dizzy and he stumbled and fell. Yilang did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yilang suddenly roared, "Zhou Xian, he's my man. How dare you?" Zhou Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's face turned ugly. Zhou Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Zhou Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yiling's side. Seeing Yiling's state, Zhou Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Zhou Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Zhou Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Zhou Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Zhou Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yilang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yilang. On both sides there were the Yi clan elders. "Why?" Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yiling and she was Zhou Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Zhou Xian, She disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yiling, what are you doing? The girl called Yiling bowed to everyone in the hall as she asked timidly, Great Elder, my brother Zhou Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yiling coldly. This is a matter of the clan, why are you butting in? Leave. Yiling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged. Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time the new prince Yilang suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yiling clenched her fists and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yilang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, Young Master Yilang inherits the position of prince. What are you shouting for? As he spoke he raised his hand and slapped Yiling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded and the right side of Yiling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry and only covered her cheek tightly. Yilang looked at the guard and smiled, What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince. Yilang nodded, You're not bad. After I become the prince I'll need 10 guards. From now on you'll be my guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. I'll go through fire and water for the prince and I'll do anything for you. Yilang nodded, Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yilang and when he saw the murderous intent in Yilang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe and the robe was tattered and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Zhou Xian who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Zhou Xian, Yilang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Zhou Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yiling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Zhou Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yilang and was about to speak. At this time Zhou Xian was like a ferocious tiger, and before the latter could react, Zhou Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. Yilang did not stop there and he charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yilang suddenly roared, Zhou Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Zhou Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's face turned ugly, while Zhou Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke he stomped down on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, Prince, save me. Zhou Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yiling's side. Seeing Yiling's state, Zhou Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Zhou Xian, her tears flowed. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Zhou Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Chapter 1633. After a long time, Daoist suddenly laughed. You're so silly. She put away the letter as she spoke. When she turned around to look at Zhou Xian, the tears on her face had disappeared and she had returned to normal. Daoist looked at Zhou Xian. Follow me. Then she turned around and left. When Zhou Xian was about to leave, Xiao Mu suddenly pulled Zhou Xian and pointed at a box above her head. Zhou Xian gently rubbed Xiao Mu's head and looked at the box. Come down. The box fell in front of Xiaomu and she opened it. Inside the box was an ancient book. On the cover of the book there were 4 big words. Soul-chasing murder. It was a martial art. Xiaomu looked at Yi Xian and Yi Xian smiled. It's for you. At this time, Daoist suddenly said, this is the strongest assassination technique in the world. If she learns it, she will be a great threat to the laws of the universe. Under the laws of the universe, almost no one can resist it. Then she turned to look at Xiaomu and smiled. Master still loves you very much. Xiaomu looked at Daoist coldly and then kept the ancient book. Daoist suddenly put her fingers together, and the space in front of them turned into a strange vortex. She brought Yi Xian and Xiaomu into it. As soon as the 3 of them entered, they arrived at an unknown starry sky. The starry sky was silent and the starry sky was dim and it was a little oppressive. Daoist walked into the distance. Xiaomu looked around and she was a little curious and confused. At this time Daoist smiled. This is the place where Master used to live and now it's deserted. Yi Xian looked at Daoist and he didn't say anything. Daoist smiled. You must be curious about what I want you to do. Don't worry, it's not something that will make things difficult for you. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. You want that alien to come in? Daoist nodded. Yes. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? The corners of Daoist's mouth lifted. I can't tell you for the time being. Yi Xian did not ask any further. Not long after, Daoist brought Yi Xian and Xiaomu to a palace. In front of the palace, there was a statue that was almost 100 zhang tall. The statue was holding a sword in front of its chest. Daoist said with smile. A Vichy swordsman is the guardian of this place. Dino, before I saw the swordsman behind you, I always thought that the Vichy swordsman was the ceiling of swordsmanship. Unfortunately, that was not the case. Just like the old saying goes, no matter how strong you are, there's always someone stronger. Yi Xian looked at the swordsman of the Avicii sect. No one knew what he was thinking. Daoist asked again, you want to wake him up? Yi Xian nodded. Daoist shook his head. Not now. Yi Xian asked. Why? Daoist said with a smile, this guy will cause me a lot of trouble. So you can't wake him up now. Come lead the way. Only when he senses your aura will he not wake up. Now he is in a deep slumber. However, his swordsmanship will guard this place instinctively. I don't want to fight him because if I do he might wake up. So I need you to lead the way. Yi Xian took another glance at the statue. Daoist continued, don't try to wake him up. Otherwise you won't be able to bear the consequences. Green City Yi family's ancestral shrine. Ancestors Yi Xian is incompetent and immoral. From now on Yi Xian's position as the crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a young man with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. Beside him were the Yi family's elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral shrine. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the family wanted to dismiss Yi Xian, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral shrine and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince. Why did you cripple him? The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the family. Why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning. The great elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi family's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years. Even now he's fighting for the family. This is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince position. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded. Yi Ling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She just covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard quickly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply. "I'm willing to go through fire and water for the crown prince. I'm willing to risk my life for you." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man wore a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Zhou Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Zhou Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes. His face was dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this moment, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt dizzy and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian ignored Zhang Mu. Walking up to Yi Ling, seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides there were the Yi clan elders. "Why?" At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the ancestral hall, and asked timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, why are you butting in? Leave." Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. This is truly unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. Whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men drag her away. At this time the new prince Yilang suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The great elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yiling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yilang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master Yilang inherits the title of prince. What are you shouting about?" As he spoke he raised his hand and slapped Yiling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yiling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry and only held her cheek tightly. Yilang looked at the guard and smiled, "What's your name?" The guard quickly bowed. "This subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yilang nodded, "You're not bad. After I become the prince I'll need 10 guards. From now on you'll be my guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. "This subordinate will go through fire and water for the prince and I'll do anything for you." Yilang nodded, "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yilang and when he saw the murderous intent in Yilang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment Zhang Mu saw something and suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man wore a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Zhou Xian who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Zhou Xian, Yilang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall the elders frowned. The great elder squinted his eyes and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Zhou Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yiling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Zhou Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yilang and was about to speak. At this time Zhou Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Zhou Xian's fist landed on his face. Ping. Zhang Mu felt dizzy and he stumbled and fell. Yilang did not stop there and rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yilang suddenly roared, "Zhou Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Zhou Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's face turned ugly, while Zhou Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Zhou Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yiling's side. Seeing Yiling's state, Zhou Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Zhou Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Zhou Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Ping. Chapter 1634. Nothing at all. Her words were like knives that cut straight to the heart. Zhou Xian wanted to refute Dao Yi but he didn't know how to retort. Without his father and Qing, or what was he? To someone like Dao Yi he was nothing at all. Moreover, Dao Yi was right. What right did he have to complain about the unfairness of the world? There were too many unfair things in the world. Although he was born with the body of disaster, he was still alive. He still had his father and Qing. On the other hand, many people didn't even have the chance to fight back against the unfairness of fate. At least he had the chance to fight back. Dao Yi walked to the side of the palace. She looked at the distant sky and softly said, "Master, you are no longer a child. Don't call others elders just because you can't beat them." "I understand," Zhou Xian said softly. Dao Yi turned to look at Zhou Xian and smiled. "Do you really understand?" Zhou Xian nodded. "I do." Dao Yi nodded. "It's good that you understand. If you don't, you'll suffer more in the future and lose more." With that she walked out of the hall. In the hall, Zhou Xian didn't speak for a long time. Just then Xiao Mu suddenly grabbed Zhou Xian's hand. Zhou Xian looked at Xiao Mu but Xiao Mu held onto Zhou Xian's hand tightly and didn't say a word. Zhou Xian smiled. "I'm fine." With that he held Xiao Mu's hand and walked out of the hall. Outside the hall, Dao Yi looked at the two holding hands. She turned and smiled. Let's go to the next place. Yi Xian nodded. I'll listen to you. Dao Yi turned to Yi Xian. Listen to me? Yi Xian nodded. Dao Yi smiled. It seems like you've listened to me. Let's go. With that she turned around and left. Yi Xian dragged Xiaomu along with him. When passing by the two statues, Yi Xian didn't even look at them. He had no other ideas. This was because he knew that none of his ideas were realistic. Even if he were to awaken the two statues, they might not be able to do anything to this woman. In the starry sky, Dao Yi walked slowly while Yi Xian and Xiaomu followed behind him. Meanwhile Yi Xian suddenly said, "What was that ancient book just now?" Dao Yi said with smile, "Master used to like an ancient book very much." Yi Xian asked, "What ancient book?" Dao Yi said, "The Theory of Rules was written by Master. I really liked the first half." Yi Xian glanced at Dao Yi. "You don't like the back?" Dao Yi smiled. "It's not that I don't like it. I just feel that the latter part is too unrealistic. Master said that this universe must have rules. The more powerful one is, the more they should be bound by the rules. However, he never thought of a problem. What if someone is stronger than him? Moreover, he is the one who makes the rules. If he breaks the rules, who will be able to restrain him?" Yi Xian said, "Have you told him?" Dao Yi nodded. "Yes, but I can't change his mind. Master is quite stubborn at times." Yi Xian suddenly said, "What do you think?" Dao Yi Green City Yi Family Ancestral Hall. Ancestors. Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on Yi Xian's position as crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a young man with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi family's elders. "Why?" At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a hint of fear in her eyes. Her name was Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed slightly to the people in the ancestral hall. She said timidly, "Grand Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a young prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a family matter. What are you interrupting for? Leave." Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince." "Impudent!" The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning." The great elder coldly replied, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi family's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years. Even now he's fighting for the family. The family is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master Yi Lang inherits the title of crown prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She just covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard quickly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the crown prince I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. "Subordinate will go through fire and water for the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Zhou Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Zhou Xian, Yilang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder's eyes narrowed and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking about. From afar, when Zhou Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yiling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Zhou Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yiling and was about to speak. At this time, Zhou Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Zhou Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt dizzy and he stumbled and fell. Yiling did not stop there and charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yiling suddenly roared, "Zhou Xian, he's my man. How dare you?" Zhou Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yiling's face turned ugly, while Zhou Xian lifted his head to look at him, barking, "Your man." As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Zhou Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yiling's side. Seeing Yiling's state, Zhou Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Zhou Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Zhou Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Zhou Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Zhou Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yiling. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yiling. On both sides there were the Yi clan elders. "Why?" Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yiling and she was Zhou Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Zhou Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yiling, what are you doing?" The girl called Yiling bowed to everyone in the hall as she asked timidly, "Great elder, my brother Zhou Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yiling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, why are you butting in? Leave." Yiling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince." Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince Yiling suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yiling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yiling. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master Yiling inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yiling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded and the right side of Yiling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry and only held her cheek tightly. Yiling looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yiling nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 guards. From now on, you'll be my guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. I'll go through fire and water for the prince and I'll do anything for you. Yilang nodded. Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yilang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yilang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and he suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Zhou Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Zhou Xian, Yilang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder squinted his eyes and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Zhou Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yiling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Zhou Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yilang and was about to speak. At this moment, Zhou Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Zhou Xian's fist landed on his face. Ping. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. Yilang did not stop there and charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yilang suddenly roared, "Zhou Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Zhou Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's face turned ugly, while Zhou Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Zhou Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yiling's side. Seeing Yiling's state, Zhou Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Zhou Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Zhou Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Ping. Chapter 1635. Zhou Xian and Daoist followed Daoist to the bamboo house. In front of the bamboo house, Zhou Xian saw a familiar person. Xiao. At this moment, Xiao was sitting on the ground playing chess with a woman in a red dress. When he saw Xiao, Zhou Xian was slightly startled and then said softly, "Xiao." Xiao did not turn to look at Zhou Xian and continued playing chess. At this moment, the woman in the red dress looked at Zhou Xian. She glanced at Zhou Xian and did not speak. Daoist suddenly walked to the woman in the red dress and said with a smile, "Let me introduce you, this is the law of misfortune." Misfortune law. Zhou Xian's gaze fell on the woman in the red dress. The woman in the red dress was also looking at him. Her expression was indifferent and not particularly friendly. Daoist said with a smile, "Your life has not been smooth sailing, and it is related to our misfortune. Now that you have seen her in person, what do you think?" Zhou Xian said lightly, "No." Daoist blinked. But Zhou Xian said, "I can't beat her. I can't beat her." Daoist was slightly startled and then laughed. "Indeed. There is still a big gap between you and our misfortune." As she said, she looked at Xiao. "Master Dino? Xiao resisted us to help you, this is something we did not expect." At this moment, the law of misfortune suddenly said, "He is not master." Daoist shook his head. "He is." Xiao frowned. "You know he is not." Daoist said with a smile, "He is." Xiao shook her head. "He is not." Daoist said again, "Xiao, do you know why he is?" Xiao looked at Daoist. "Why?" Daoist said with a smile, "Because his fate is one with master and it is not as simple as reincarnation. He would eventually remember everything that had happened in the past. The only difference is that he has the memory of this life." Xiao was silent. Daoist smiled. "Show him some respect." Xiao still said nothing. At this moment, Zhou Xian walked up to Xiao. He looked at Xiao. "I'm very happy to see you." Xiao looked at Zhou Xian. "What are you doing here?" Zhou Xian said, "Daoist asked me to come." Xiao looked at Daoist and Daoist smiled. "Don't worry, I won't kill him." Xiao looked at Daoist. Xiao lowered his head and did not speak. Daoist gently rubbed Xiao's head and said with smile, "Little girl, you really care about him. However, this fellow isn't a single-minded person. Moreover, when it comes to matters of the heart, he practically avoids it and never deals with it seriously. Hence, if you have any other thoughts about him, you might end up hurting yourself in the end. Ian Daoist said, Xiao 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 yi, Daoist said. But this guy is not a single-minded person. He always avoids relationships and never deals with them seriously. If you have other thoughts about him, you will hurt yourself. She looked at Zhou Xian. How do you feel about Xiao Er? Zhou Xian hesitated and did not speak. Daoist shook his head. You are a coward. At least you are a coward when it comes to relationships. Zhou Xian was about to speak when Daoist said, according to my investigation, you have many women around you. Most of them are interested in you. But what about you? You have never given them a clear attitude. For example, Miss An who came from Qing City with you. Did you give her a promise? No. And Miss Xiao Jiao from Qing City. And King Tuoba from Jiang Country. Do you remember her? Zhou Xian nodded. I remember. Daoist smiled. Then do you know how much suffering it was for her to wait for you in Qingqing? You did not give her a promise and did not contact her. In her world, it is as if you have disappeared. But she is still waiting for you. Waiting for you alone. Zhou Xian lowered his head and did not speak. Daoist continued. Initially I wanted to teach you a lesson. But after seeing how pitiful she is, I gave up. My good master, ask yourself. Are you worth her waiting for? Zhou Xian lowered his head and remained silent. Daoist smiled. Xiao Er is willing to fight against the adversity for you. But what about you? Have you taken the initiative to look for her? But would she be in danger if she did? Master, ask yourself honestly, have you ever really cared about her? Don't tell me you care about her. You can't say that you care about her. You have to prove it with your actions. From the moment Xiao Er disappeared until now, you have never taken the initiative to look for her. To be honest, you are not worth her waiting for. Zhou Xian nodded. It is my fault. Daoist smiled. You have made a lot of mistakes. You have let down too many people when it comes to love. If you don't like her, don't seduce her. Because when a woman falls in love with a man but cannot get the man's love, it is very painful. Then she shook her head. Whether it is the past life or this life, you have always been like this. You have always avoided love. Zhou Xian looked at Daoist. Why did you look for me? Daoist smiled. Don't change the topic. I am not finished. Shouldn't you say something to Xiao Er? Zhou Xian was silent for a moment. He walked to Xiao Er and said softly. In the beginning I treated you as an enemy. I was always thinking about how to kill you. Later on I slowly treated you as a friend. When I saw you destroyed your body because of me, I was very touched. But I know that touching is not love. I like you more than a friend but less than a lover. That is how I feel about you. Xiao Er was silent for a long time. After a long time she said, Me too. Zhou Xian smiled. Now I feel that I like you a little more. Xiao Er looked at Zhou Xian and did not say anything. Zhou Xian said softly. I did not come to find you. Do you blame me? Xiao Er looked at Zhou Xian. Strange. Zhou Xian said. I am sorry. Then she took out a small wooden doll and put it in Xiao Er's hand. The wooden doll looked exactly like Xiao Er. It even had a smile on its face. Xiao Er looked at the wooden doll and did not say anything. Zhou Xian said again. I am sorry. Xiao Er kept the wooden doll. I forgive you. Daoist smiled. Looks like Xiao Er's heart knot has been untied. Xiao Er looked at Zhou Xian. What are you going to do now? Zhou Xian turned to look at Daoist. Miss Daoist, what do you want me to do next? Daoist smiled. One last thing. Then she pointed at a long bookshelf not far behind her. It was filled with ancient books. There were at least 10,000 of them. Daoist said. Finish reading them. Zhou Xian looked at the ancient books. Finish reading them? Daoist nodded. After reading them you can leave. Zhou Xian said in a deep voice. What do you want? Daoist smiled. Nothing. After reading them you can leave. Moreover, the void race will not go to the 5th dimension. 5 years. I will give you 5 years. In 5 years you can develop well. Zhou Xian was silent for a while. He walked to the bookshelf and picked up an ancient book. When he saw the content his expression changed. It was a martial art. A martial art that he had never seen before. It was a martial art that surpassed his knowledge. Daoist suddenly said. These were all brought by Master. There are mental cultivation methods, martial arts, divine abilities and even some knowledge that surpasses this world. Can be said that these are the most valuable things in this universe. Do you know why the laws of this universe are so strong? Because Master taught us these things since we were young. Our knowledge of this world far surpasses other people in this universe. Especially those martial arts and mental cultivation methods. Even with my current eyes, I feel that they are very good. Especially since there are also Master's observations and insights. You can read more of them. They can help you avoid too many detours. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. I don't understand your intentions. Dao Yi smiled. You don't need to understand. You just need to remember one thing. From now on you only have 5 years. 5 years isn't too much, but it isn't too little either. In these 5 years, you have a chance to change your future. As she spoke, she walked to the bookshelf and picked up an ancient book and placed it in front of Yi Xian. If you don't work hard in 5 years, many people will die. Just like in the Immortal Emperor clan. You can only watch as the Immortal Emperor clan members self-destruct one after another. At that time, you will feel even more despair than in the Immortal Emperor clan. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. What exactly do you want to do? Dao Yi shook his head and smiled. That isn't something you should be thinking about now. What you should be thinking about now is what you should do. After all, you don't have a lot of time. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi and opened the ancient book that Dao Yi gave him. As he read, Yi Xian's expression gradually became serious. Dao Yi smiled and walked in front of Xiao Er. You go and read it too. Xiao Er looked at Yinan. Yinan nodded. Let's read it. Xiao Er immediately stood up and walked to Yi Xian's side. Together with Yi Xian they read the ancient books. These are the most precious things in the universe. If any one of them is placed outside, it will shake the entire universe. Yi Xian and Xiao Er read it together. From time to time they would discuss it. Dao Yi sat in front of Yinan. She looked at the chessboard and shook her head. Xiao Er's chess skills are really bad. As she spoke, she picked up a black chess piece and placed it down. As she placed it down, the black chess piece that was forced into a desperate situation came back to life. Yinan picked up a chess piece and placed it down. What do you want to do? Dao Yi smiled. What do you think? Yinan shook her head. He hates you. If you give him a chance, he will kill you without hesitation. Dao Yi nodded. I know. Yinan said softly. Dao Yi, if you want him to become more outstanding, you shouldn't be too ruthless. You destroyed the Immortal Emperor clan. He will not forgive you. Dao Yi nodded again. I know. Yinan frowned. Dao Yi suddenly leaned back on the chair. She used her hands as a pillow. She said softly, along the way too many people have helped him. He looks miserable and tired. However, he will not die. Because there will always be people who will help him at the crucial moment. Everyone is a good person. Someone has to be the bad guy, right? As she spoke, she turned and looked at Yi Xian in the distance. I will be more ruthless to him. Chapter 1636. Outside the bamboo house, it had started raining, bringing with it a slight chill. Inside the bamboo house, Yi Xian and Xiao Er were quietly reading a book. Both of them were very serious. On the side, Dao Yi and Disaster were quietly playing chess. Very quiet. Yi Xian was reading very seriously, very seriously. The name of the book he was reading was Unification of the Great Paths. It described the essence of countless great paths, including the way of the sword. In the past he did not have a direction, nor did he have a place to learn, but now he did. Yi Xian knew that this was an opportunity for him. In the following time Yi Xian read like crazy every day and then comprehended. Many times he would also ask Dao Yi for advice and Dao Yi would also answer. Just like that, a month passed. During this month, although Yi Xian's way of the sword was still at the breaking mortal realm, his state of mind had greatly improved. Facts proved that to improve one not only needed to fight, but also needed to learn. Because learning could let one know many of one's shortcomings, it would let one find a direction that one could work towards. Fighting blindly would not work. Of course, just learning without actual combat would not work either. In short, in the past month, Yi Xian had gained a lot. However, he had a feeling that he was very ignorant of this world's martial path, ignorant of the way of the sword. The more he improved, the more ignorant he felt. At this moment, Yi Xian also understood why the universal laws were so powerful. Because those universal laws had received this kind of martial path education since childhood, how could they not be powerful? On this day Dao Yi left the bamboo house and no one knew where he went. After reading an ancient book for a long time, Yi Xian suddenly walked in front of Disaster. Disaster looked at Yi Xian but did not say anything. Yi Xian hesitated, then said, "Where is Dao Yi?" In fact, he did not like disaster. After all, the reason why he had been so miserable along the way was because of this woman. Doom said indifferently, "He went to take care of some matters." Yi Xian glanced at disaster. "Can I ask a question?" Anan looked at Yi Xian and did not say anything. Yi Xian placed the ancient book on the table. "It says that the great Tao is oneself. I've read this part before, but I know that the true meaning of this book is definitely not what I know. Can you explain it to me in detail?" Misfortune said nothing. Yi Xian nodded. "Sorry to bother you." As he spoke, he picked up the book and left. Meanwhile, Calamity suddenly said, "The Grand Tao is you. Means that the Tao is you. You don't have to pursue the Grand Tao. You should discover yourself, understand yourself, surpass yourself, and destroy yourself in the end." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "I know the one in front, but the one in the back. Self-destruction?" Calamity remained expressionless. "Do you know about butterflies?" Yi Xian nodded. "I know." Calamity suddenly asked, "What was before butterflies?" Hearing this, Yi Xian's pupils suddenly shrank. His right hand clenched the ancient book tightly. After a long time he said softly, "I understand. Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis. Destroying oneself was not to kill oneself but to metamorphose." Thinking of this, Yi Xian's thoughts became clear. He did not directly reach the mortal extinguishing realm. He was still at the mortal breaking realm. However, at this moment his state of mind was completely different. He was only a thin sheet of paper away from the mortal extinguishing realm. Yi Xian got up and walked out of the bamboo house. He looked at the lake in the distance. A pupa needs to turn into a cocoon to become a butterfly. Humans also need to metamorphose to become another, themselves. Mortal extinguishing realm. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and slowly closed his eyes. Calm down and focus. Meditate. Inside the bamboo house, Calamity glanced at Yi Xian and did not say anything. At this moment, Xiao Er sat in front of Calamity and said softly, "Will Dao Yi kill him?" Calamity shook her head. "No." Xiao Er asked again, "What does she want to do?" Calamity said softly, "Do you think she's scary?" Xiao Er nodded. Calamity turned to look at Yi Xian, who was sitting quietly in the distance. "There's someone scarier than her. If Master can't even deal with her, then 5 years later he'll be very miserable, 100 times worse than now." Xiao Er said in a deep voice, "Alien?" Calamity said, "Just one of them." Xiao Er suddenly said, "How strong does he have to be for him to not be so miserable?" Calamity lowered her head and looked at the chessboard in front of her. After a long time she said softly, "I don't know. Daoist doesn't know either. The only thing we know is that he's currently very weak, very weak." Xiao Er turned to look at Yi Xian and a trace of heartache flashed in her eyes. Her intuition told her that no matter how hard Yi Xian worked, his enemy would always be much stronger than him. The current him was invincible among those in the same realm. However, who was his enemy? It was the void race, the universal law. Forget about the universal law, he couldn't even defeat the void race, and even if he could defeat the void race, there was still the universal law. However, she knew that even if Yi Xian reached the transcendent God realm, he still couldn't defeat the universal law. In front of the universal law, a transcendent God realm powerhouse was still very weak. And even if he could defeat the universal law, but there were still the alien people waiting for him. No matter how hard he worked, no matter how much he risked his life, the enemy would always be much stronger than him. It was too bitter. Xiao Er said softly, "I want to help him." Calamity looked at Xiao Er and after a long time she said softly, "You will die. Die. Not just possibly die." Xiao Er looked straight at Calamity. "I won't regret it." Calamity was silent for a long time, then shook her head. Silly girl. In the following days Yi Xian spent all his time either reading or meditating. Another month passed. On this day Daoist suddenly returned. Daoist walked to the side of Yi Xian, who was meditating by the lake. "Follow me." Yi Xian opened his eyes and looked at Daoist. "Where to?" Daoist said, "To save someone." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Who?" Daoist said, "Your sister Nian." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression changed greatly. He immediately stood up and said angrily, "What did you do to her?" Daoist said with a smile, "I killed her." Yi Xian stared at Daoist. Daoist said with a smile, "What can you do to me?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Don't hurt her. Dao Yi's expression suddenly turned cold. I'll tell you one last time, never beg your enemy to be merciful to you. In the future, every time you beg me I will kill someone around you until everyone around you is dead. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi and clenched his right hand tightly. Dao Yi said with a smile, "Want to hit me?" Yi Xian said expressionlessly, "Let's go save her." Dao Yi blinked. "It's you, not me." With that she turned and left. Yi Xian followed. Xiao Er wanted to follow but was stopped by Yi Nan. Not only was Xiao Er stopped, Xiao Mu who wanted to follow was also stopped by Yi Nan. Dao Yi brought Yi Xian to an unknown world. This world was gray and the surroundings were cold. In the distance there was a mountain. On the cliff of the mountain Yi Xian saw a coffin. The coffin was hung vertically on the cliff and in the coffin lay a woman. This woman was none other than Moon Yanyan. Seeing Moon Yanyan, Yi Xian clenched his fists. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Moon Yanyan, 5th dimension Tendo. She is a very outstanding woman. Because of you she died once. Now she will die again. You only have an hour. If you can get there in an hour you can save her. If you can't she will die for sure. Just like the Undying Emperor clan she will die for real. Her soul will be destroyed and she will not even have the chance to reincarnate. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. You can target me. Dao Yi smiled. Aren't I targeting you now? Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. If I die can you let everyone go? Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Are you begging me? Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, Dao Yi suddenly smiled. You have wasted a lot of time. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi then turned around and walked towards the mountain. He activated his time shuttle boots and arrived in front of the coffin in the blink of an eye. Just as he was about to touch the coffin, a broadsword suddenly fell from the sky. A transcendent state expert. Yi Xian's expression changed and he blocked it with his sword. Boom. Yi Xian fell from the sky and landed heavily on the ground. Rumble. The ground around him collapsed. At this moment, a shadow suddenly appeared behind Yi Xian. Before Yi Xian could react, a dagger was placed at his throat. Transcendent state assassins. And they were 2 transcendent state experts. Dao Yi walked in front of Yi Xian and looked down at Yi Xian. You have lost. However, I can give you one more chance. Remember, this is your last chance. Yi Xian stared at Dao Yi. I am the one in the transcending mortality realm. Dao Yi looked coldly at Yi Xian. Will your enemies pity you just because you are weak? Or do you want your enemies to be fair to you? Wake up. Your enemies will not spare you just because you are in the transcending mortality realm, nor will they pity you. As she spoke she retreated to the side. The assassin behind Yi Xian disappeared without a trace. At the top of the mountain stood a middle-aged man with a broadsword in his hand. Yi Xian looked up at the coffin with Nian Yan in it and clenched his right hand tightly. Dao Yi said, Remember, I will not give you another chance. If you fail you will not die but Miss Nian Yan will die. And the game will not end. After she dies there will be another person in there, the person closest to you. After a long silence Yi Xian stood up and walked into the distance. The moment he took his first step he activated the power of his bloodline. Boom. In an instant Yi Xian was covered in blood. A transcendent state assassin. Yi Xian knew very well that this assassin was only second to Xiao Mu. If he wanted to defeat this assassin he would have to use all his strength. All his trump cards. Yi Xian slowly walked into the distance. When he reached the foot of the mountain, a cold light appeared behind him. Yi Xian immediately activated his sword domain. However, as soon as the sword domain appeared, it was shattered by the dagger. At that moment Yi Xian suddenly turned around and stabbed with his sword. However, the moment he drew his sword the assassin had already disappeared. The sword missed. After a moment of silence, the left side of Yi Xian's chest suddenly split open, and blood slowly flowed out. Yi Xian turned around and continued forward. After a few steps, another cold light appeared in front of him. This time it was aimed at his throat. Yi Xian reacted extremely quickly and dodged to the side. Flash. A dagger brushed past Yi Xian's throat. Yi Xian was about to attack, but the assassin had already disappeared. Yi Xian took a step forward. The moment he took that step, a dagger suddenly appeared at the back of his neck. Yi Xian did not turn around. Instead he twisted his wrist and stabbed behind him. It was a suicidal move. However, his sword missed because the assassin had already disappeared. However, there was a deep dagger wound at the back of his neck. The assassin did not choose to die together with him because he had a huge advantage. There was no need for him to die together. Yi Xian stood where he was. He raised his head and looked at the coffin. He did not have much time left. He knew that Dao Yi was not trying to scare him. She would really kill Sister Nian. After a while, Yi Xian said softly, "Dao Yi, do you mean what you said?" Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. "I'll let her go if you touch the coffin." Yi Xian nodded. "All right." As soon as he said that, boom. Yi Xian's body started burning. He was not burning his lifespan but his soul. Dao Yi was stunned when she saw this. A life for a life. He was going to use his life to save Mu Nian's life. Soul ignition. It had to be said that Dao Yi was indeed a little confused. She did not expect Yi Xian to choose to burn his soul. At this moment, Yinan suddenly appeared next to Dao Yi. Yinan looked at Yi Xian who was burning his soul and said softly, "You're too much." Dao Yi did not say anything. In the distance after Yi Xian burned his soul he stomped his right foot and shot into the sky. Buzz. The sound of a sword soared into the sky. Die. At this moment Yi Xian was really asking for death. It was not that he wanted to die but he had to die. Facing two transcendent state experts, he really had no other way but to burn his soul. If there was even a little way he would try his best. However, he really had no other way. He was only at the breaking mortality stage. Facing two transcendent state experts, he really had no other way but to burn his soul. He could only choose to burn his soul and fight to the end. If he could save Sister Nian, that would naturally be for the best. If not, then he would die with Sister Nian. Soon Yi Xian arrived in front of the coffin. At this moment, a large saber slashed towards him. Yi Xian stabbed out with his sword. He staked his life on this sword. Boom. The sword light shattered and Yi Xian fell from the sky. In the air, Yi Xian looked at the coffin containing Mu Nian, blood continuously flowing from the corner of his mouth. "Sister Nian. I'm sorry. I tried my best. I'm sorry." As he spoke, two streams of tears flowed from his eyes. He had many concerns. Yi Ling and Lanxiao Shao Yi Qing, and the remaining clansmen of the Undying Emperor clan and the Fifth Dimension, and many more. He also wanted to live, wanted to protect those he cared about, wanted to see Yi Ling, wanted to see Qing, wanted to see Lanxiao, wanted to see Zhang Wenxia, wanted to see Tuo Bayan who was still far away. However, there was really no other way. He tried his best. He really tried his best. Gradually, everyone became more and more blurry. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. "Qing, don't save me anymore. I'm really tired. Wants to rest." P.S. Early outburst. Chapter 1637. Just as Yi Xian was about to land on the ground, a hand stopped him. Dao Yi hugged Yi Xian and placed her left hand on Yi Xian's chest. Yi Xian's burning soul immediately calmed down. Dao Yi wiped away the tears on Yi Xian's cheeks and said softly, "If you're tired, take a rest." Adonis looked at Dao Yi and asked, "Did you really exterminate the Undying Emperor clan?" Dao Yi smiled and said, "What do you think?" Adonis shook her head and said, "You won't exterminate the Undying Emperor clan because you've never made him sad." Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "I've never hugged him like this before." Adonis looked at Dao Yi and said, "Why did you make him hate you?" Dao Yi gently stroked Yi Xian's cheeks and said, "Adonis, you've been living too comfortably. Including Master. Master's dreams are beautiful but he neglected one thing. Dreams are beautiful but reality is cruel, very cruel." As she spoke, she grabbed Yi Xian's cracked hand with her left hand. Very quickly Yi Xian's injuries began to heal bit by bit. Dao Yi said, "Only when you've lost something will you know how to cherish it. If you don't make him lose something, he won't know how precious it is to have it. If you don't make him despair, he won't know how good his life is now. Only when he's lost something, despair, powerless and wants to die will he grow. And if he doesn't grow, he'll be even more desperate in the future." Adonis said in a deep voice, "Alien?" Dao Yi shook her head and said, "Don't ask. Knowing too much isn't a good thing." As she spoke, she carried Yi Xian and left. Adonis turned around and looked at the coffin on the peak of the cliff. The coffin was already empty. After a while, Adonis turned around and left. In an unknown part of the starry sky, inside a bamboo house, there was a Xiao Ta sitting on a table inside the house. This was where Dao Yi lived. At this time, Dao Yi suddenly walked in. Seeing Dao Yi, Xiao Ta quickly hid to the side. Dao Yi ignored Xiao Ta and walked to the bed. A woman was lying on the bed. The woman was none other than Moon Yanyan. Daoist smiled. Wake up. As soon as he finished speaking, Moon Yanyan suddenly opened his eyes. When he saw Daoist, Moon Yanyan said, Universal laws. Daoist nodded. Yes. Moon Yanyan looked at Daoist. Why did you let me off? Daoist smiled. She took out an ancient book and placed it in front of Moon Yanyan. Miss Yanyan, from now on you will cultivate well here. As for him, you don't need to care about him. The more you care about him, the more you will harm him. Because in the future when you can't do anything you will be in despair. With that she turned and left. When she reached the door she glanced at Xiao Ta in the corner. Xiao Ta, behave yourself. Otherwise I will smash you into pieces. With that she turned and left. Xiao Ta was speechless. In the bamboo house, Moon Yanyan looked at the ancient book in front of him in silence. After an unknown amount of time, Zhou Xian slowly opened his eyes. What he saw was a lake. The surface of the lake was calm and sparkling. At this time, a voice suddenly came from beside Zhou Xian. You're awake. Zhou Xian turned his head. Daoist was sitting next to him looking at him with a smile. Zhou Xian said softly, I'm not dead yet? Daoist smiled. Are you disappointed? Zhou Xian nodded. A little. Daoist smiled. You want to die? It's not that simple. Zhou Xian looked at Daoist. Sister Nian is still alive, right? Daoist hesitated for a while and nodded. She didn't want to agitate Zhou Xian anymore. Hearing this, Zhou Xian turned and looked at the lake in the distance. He leaned on the stone steps behind him and said nothing. At this moment he suddenly felt a little relaxed. As if he had discovered something, Zhou Xian suddenly opened his palm and a sword appeared in his hand. Mortal Destruction Realm. He had reached the Mortal Destruction Realm. Zhou Xian was stunned. At this time Daoist smiled. You risked your life. Zhou Xian looked at Daoist. I can break through just because I want to die? Daoist smiled. It's not that simple. There's another reason why you could break through, it's because of your enlightenment in the past 2 months. Zhou Xian said softly, I understand. Daoist suddenly pointed at the lake in front of him. See those fishes? Zhou Xian looked at the surface of the lake. There were many fish swimming in the lake. Daoist smiled. If we fight here, what do you think will happen to those fishes? Zhou Xian said, they will die. Daoist nodded. Actually, in this vast universe, very few people can control their own fate. Many people in this universe often talk about defying the heavens and changing their fate. In fact, no one can control their own fate. Of course, the 3 swordsmen behind you are an exception. Zhou Xian said softly, can you tell me what you want to do? Daoist smiled. You're wrong. What you need to think now is that since I won't kill you, you should make use of this to become stronger. As for other things, it's meaningless for you to know. Zhou Xian nodded. Okay. Daoist suddenly waved his right hand. The lake in the distance suddenly turned into a huge hologram. On the hologram, the scene of Zhou Xian and the assassin's battle was shown. Previously, Zhou Xian couldn't see the assassin. He could only see the assassin when the assassin attacked. But now he could see the assassin. Even now he could feel the assassin's thoughts. Zhou Xian looked at Daoist in disbelief. Daoist smiled. Do you know what you're lacking? Zhou Xian said in a deep voice, I know. Now that he could see the assassin's thoughts, he naturally knew what he was lacking. Because he found out that his thoughts and reactions were all within the assassin's calculations. Most importantly, he found out that the assassin had lowered his own realm. The assassin was at the breaking mortal realm when he tried to assassinate him. He wasn't suppressed by his realm but by his battle awareness. Thinking of this, Zhou Xian felt a little embarrassed. He thought that the assassin was bullying him. Daoist smiled. Previously you always thought that you were invincible among your peers. What about now? Zhou Xian was silent for a moment. Arrogant. Daoist smiled. It's good that you understand. When you think that you're invincible among your peers, it's a kind of complacency. It's like a cup. If the cup is filled with water, it's difficult to fill anything else. When the moon is full, it's empty. When the water is full, it overflows. When the people are full, they become arrogant. As she spoke, she looked at the hologram on the lake in front of her. It's very good. Learn well. Don't think that you've only fought a few rounds. These few rounds contain a lot of things. If you can understand them, you'll improve a lot. After saying this, she stood up and walked into the bamboo house. Beside the lake, Zhou Xian looked at the light screen on the surface of the lake. He looked at it very seriously. Every time he watched it again he would learn something new. Inside the bamboo house, Daoist walked to the chessboard and sat down. Opposite her was Adversity and behind her was Xiaomu. Xiaomu was also there. Xiaomu's eyes were fixed on Xian. Adversity suddenly asked, "Where's eighth brother?" Daoist smiled. "He's hiding in the lower realm." Adversity said in a deep voice, "Master met her guardian. It was Xian. But she didn't show up at that time." Daoist smiled. "She wouldn't dare. First, she's afraid of me. Second, she's afraid of the swordsman behind Master. That swordsman has a bad temper. If she shows up, I'm afraid she'll be killed." Adversity nodded. "What's your next plan?" Daoist looked at Xian outside. "Let him grow." Adversity frowned. Daoist smiled. "I'll use another method." Adversity looked at Daoist. "What happened back then?" Daoist smiled. "Ming is right. I betrayed Master." Adversity shook her head. "Ninth brother and I were the last ones to see Master. Master told us not to blame you." Daoist shook his head and whispered, "Master is a fool." Adversity looked at Daoist. "What happened back then?" Daoist smiled. "I don't want to say." Adversity nodded. "Good." She paused for a moment before continuing. "Did you really kill seventh brother?" "Seventh brother was the life law." Daoist smiled. "Guess." Adversity shook her head. "You didn't kill her. But you can't save her in front of that woman." Daoist said softly. "You're right. I can't save her in front of her unless—" She shook her head. "Let's not talk about this anymore. What we need to do now is to make good use of these 5 years. 5 years isn't a lot of time." Just as Adversity was about to speak, Xian walked in. Xian looked at Daoist. "I want to fight that killer again." Daoist smiled. "Are you sure?" Xian nodded. "I'm sure." Daoist smiled. She waved her hand. In an instant Xian appeared in an unknown star field. This star field was dead silent. It was perfect for battle. At this moment, a cold light suddenly appeared at Xian's throat. Xian ignored the cold light. Instead he used his finger as a sword and stabbed forward. A life for a life. He knew that he was suppressed by this killer in terms of speed. He couldn't defend or counterattack. He couldn't make the first move. All he could do was trade a life for a life. Moreover, he knew that he couldn't use his sword because it was too long. Once his opponent's speed crushed him, then the length of his sword wouldn't be an advantage anymore. It would be a disadvantage instead. He was gambling. He was gambling that his opponent wouldn't trade a life for a life. And he was right. That cold ray of light suddenly vanished when it was still half an inch away from his throat. Xian immediately utilized sword domain when he witnessed this scene. He didn't intend to utilize the sword domain to crush his opponent, and he merely intended to sense his opponent's location. The sword domain shattered as soon as it appeared. However, Xian suddenly slashed his sword towards the right. Bang! As soon as his sword descended, space shattered, and then a figure flashed out from within the shattered space. It was the killer. The killer gazed at Xian with an icy cold gaze. Daoist smiled and said, "You know that she won't die with you." Xian nodded. "Unless there's some sort of deep enmity between them, otherwise an assassin usually won't die with another." As he spoke, he glanced at the assassin. "Fighting with this girl like this is my limit." Daoist smiled. "It's not the limit." Xian looked at Daoist. Daoist smiled. "We can do better." Xian was puzzled. "What should I do?" Daoist smiled and said, "Comprehend it yourself." After a moment of silence, Xian looked at the assassin. Continue. Chapter 1638. In the starry sky, Xian was still sparring with the assassin. At first he was still being suppressed. But gradually the two were evenly matched. Of course this was because the assassin had suppressed his realm. Otherwise, with his current strength he wouldn't be able to fight against a transcendent realm expert. On the side, Yinan looked at Xian in the distance. "What do you think?" Daoist smiled. "Not bad. Not bad." Yinan looked at Daoist with a hint of surprise in her eyes. She knew that Daoist had very high standards. Ordinary people couldn't even enter her eyes. Even Xiaomu was only average in her eyes. Yinan turned to look at Xian. She couldn't help but admit that Xian was indeed capable. One must know that this assassin was personally trained by Daoist. In terms of assassination he was only second to Xiaomu. Daoist suddenly said in a soft voice. He can be even more outstanding. Yinan looked at Daoist. Daoist smiled. If a person pushes himself to the limit, there will be unexpected gains. But, let's not force him for now. Yinan said in a soft voice. Do you really want him to bear all of this? Daoist said in a soft voice. The other dimensional people won't let him go. Yinan said in a deep voice. Did Master win or lose back then? Daoist looked at Zhou Xian in the distance. After a long silence, her eyes suddenly became misty. What do you think? Yinan didn't say anything. At this time, Daoist turned around and left. Yinan asked. Where are you going? Daoist smiled. To make some arrangements. Saying so, she disappeared into the depths of the starry sky. In the distance, Zhou Xian was still madly training. Just like that, 1 month passed in the blink of an eye. In the starry sky, Zhou Xian suddenly stopped. He turned around and stabbed with his sword. With this stab, a figure was forced to stop. It was the assassin. But the next moment, the assassin mysteriously disappeared. Zhou Xian's expression was calm as he took a step back. Just as he took a step back, a dagger brushed past his forehead. The moment his feet touched the ground, Zhou Xian twisted his wrist and slashed horizontally with his sword. The space in front of him was torn apart and a figure retreated. It was the assassin. At this moment he could already deal with the assassin with ease. Zhou Xian was about to attack when Daoist suddenly said, That's enough. Zhou Xian turned around and looked at Daoist. Daoist smiled and said, Let's call it a day. Zhou Xian was puzzled. Why? Daoist said with smile. Today is a special day. I will take you to do some special things. Follow me. With that she turned around and left. Zhou Xian bowed slightly to the killer. Thank you. After that he turned around and followed Daoist. In the starry sky, Zhou Xian was walking slowly with Daoist. Zhou Xian asked, Where are we going? Daoist smiled and said, I'll let you be happy today. Be happy. Zhou Xian was stunned. At this moment the starry sky around Daoist and Zhou Xian suddenly rippled like water. Gradually the two disappeared into the starry sky. After a while Zhou Xian and Daoist appeared on a street. Looking at the street in front of him, Zhou Xian was stunned. Somewhat familiar. And also somewhat unfamiliar. Where is this? While Zhou Xian was puzzled, Daoist suddenly smiled and said, You'll know soon. As soon as she finished speaking, she and Zhou Xian disappeared without a trace. When they appeared again, they were in a large hall. A woman stood at the entrance of the hall. She wore a dragon robe and had her hands behind her back, and she held a wooden figure in her right hand. Zhou Xian was stunned when he saw this woman. He naturally knew this woman. It was Tuoba Yen. Tuoba Yen looked at the distant sky, and after a long time of silence, she looked at the wooden figure in her hand. As she looked at it, she shook her head and smiled. I wonder if you still remember me? Of course I do. A voice suddenly resounded from within the hall. Tuoba Yan's body trembled slightly and she turned around slowly. When she saw Zhou Xian, she was first stunned and then tears flowed from her eyes. Zhou Xian walked over to Tuoba Yan and Tuoba Yan smiled and said, Are you dreaming? Zhou Xian shook his head. No. As he spoke, he took Tuoba Yan's hand with both hands. Tuoba Yan lowered her head slightly and said softly, Why are you back? Zhou Xian hugged Tuoba Yan lightly. Sorry for making you wait so long. Tuoba Yan leaned her head lightly on Zhou Xian's shoulder. I thought you would never come back. Zhou Xian hugged Tuoba Yan tightly. It's my fault. Tuoba Yan hugged Zhou Xian's waist with both hands and said with a trembling voice, You left without a sound, and when you came without a sound. You're really heartless. Zhou Xian hugged Tuoba Yan tightly and did not speak for a long time. After an unknown period of time, Zhou Xian pulled Tuoba Yan to the entrance of the hall, and the two sat there. Tuoba Yan leaned on Zhou Xian's shoulder, while Zhou Xian told Tuoba Yan about his experiences over the years. Very quiet. Very warm. As for Daoist, he was nowhere to be found. After a long time, as if recalling something, Zhou Xian suddenly pulled Tuoba Yan up and said, Let's go to Zhonglan Academy. With that he pulled Tuoba Yan and disappeared on the spot. With his current strength it was too easy for him to get to Zhonglan Academy. In the blink of an eye, Zhou Xian arrived at Zhonglan Academy. At that moment, Zhonglan Academy was crowded with people and it was very lively. Zhou Xian was a little puzzled. Tuoba Yan pulled Zhou Xian's hand and said with a smile, Today is Zhonglan Academy's recruitment day. Zhou Xian blinked. Songlan Academy's recruitment day? Tuoba Yen nodded. Yes. Yi Xian asked, who's the dean now? Tuoba Yen was about to speak when a man beside him suddenly laughed. You don't even know who the dean is? Yi Xian looked at the man and the man said with a smile, brother, did you fall from the sky? You don't even know who Songlan Academy's dean is. Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. Please enlighten me, brother. The man sized up Yi Xian and said with a smile, the dean of Songlan Academy is naturally Yi Xian Dean Yi. Yi Xian. Yi Xian was stunned, then looked at Tuoba Yen beside him. Tuoba Yen said with a smile, it's always been you. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian looked at the huge stone platform in the distance, where many people were queuing up to take the test. Tuoba Yen said, only those who reach the Qi controlling realm are qualified to enter the next round of the test. Qi controlling realm. Yi Xian said softly, the requirements are even higher. Tuoba Yen said with a smile, that's right. Songlan Academy is now the strongest academy in Azure Province. Yi Xian said with a smile, wait for me. With that said, he walked over. Line up to take the test. It wasn't long before it was Yi Xian's turn. Yi Xian walked over to the measurement stone. Meanwhile, an elder suddenly said, there are 6 energy stones on the stone pillar. Pour your energy into them, and you'll pass the test if you're able to light up one. Yi Xian asked, what if I light up 6? The elder stroked his beard and smiled, no one has ever been able to light up 6. If you're able to light up 6, then you'll be the most monstrous genius in the history of Art Songlan Academy. But that's clearly impossible. Yi Xian suddenly placed his right hand on the measurement stone. In the next moment, all 6 energy stones on the measurement stone lit up. The elder's smile froze when he witnessed this scene. Countless people in the surroundings looked over in succession, and they were instantly flabbergasted when they saw the 6 energy stones that had lit up. The elder touched the energy stone and said softly, it wouldn't be broken, right? As he spoke, he turned around to look at a young man. Bring a new measurement stone up right now. The young man hurriedly turned around and left. The elder sized up Yi Xian and then he said, young man, what's your name? Yi Xian smiled and said, Yang Xian. Yang Xian. The elder sized up Yi Xian again and then he asked, who's your master? Yi Xian smiled, Tianming. The elder frowned slightly, Tianming. Yi Xian nodded. The elder pondered deeply for a moment before he said, Tianming. As he spoke, he hesitated for a moment before he said, I know. So you're Tianming's brilliant disciple. I even drank with your master. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the young man from before returned with another measurement stone. The elder held Yi Xian's hand and said with a smile, my dear nephew, I believe you. After all, you're Tianming's brilliant disciple. Based on my relationship with your master, I would still believe you even if the entire world suspects you of cheating. However, for the sake of shutting the mouths of the world, you should test it again. Yi Xian was speechless. This damnable geezer is really bad. Like how I'd believe you. Yi Xian placed his hand on the measurement stone, and it wasn't long before the 6 energy stones lit up once more. An uproar arose in the surroundings when they witnessed this scene. No one in Navy Tide Academy had ever been able to light up 6 energy stones at once. Today someone had actually lit up 6 energy stones. The elder who stood by Yi Xian's side spoke with a trembling voice, nephew, let's go. From now onward, you're an inner court disciple of my Navy Tide Academy. As he spoke, he pulled Yi Xian along and ran up the mountain. All along the way, the old man said excitedly, nephew, the old man guarantees that once you join our Navy Tide Academy, you'll be the next dean in less than 10 years. Yi Xian blinked. What about Dean Yi? The old man roared with laughter. Dean Yi might have already perished. Yi Xian's face darkened. Motherfucker. In next to no time, the old man pulled Yi Xian along as he arrived before Navy Tide Hall. The old man was just about to enter when a middle-aged man obstructed the old man's path. The vice dean is teaching. Don't disturb him. The old man said furiously. The old man has something to report. As he spoke, he pushed the middle-aged man aside, and then he pulled Yi Xian along as he entered the hall. As soon as he entered the hall, Yi Xian saw a familiar figure. Old Mo Yunqi. At this moment, Mo Yunqi was holding an ancient book and explaining it, and over 10 people sat before him. There were both men and women amongst them. Mo Yunqi was stunned on the spot when he saw Yi Xian. The old man was just about to speak when Mo Yunqi suddenly charged over to Yi Xian and smashed a heavy punch on Yi Xian's chest, and then he roared with laughter. Bandit Yi, you've actually returned. Bandit Yi. Everyone here was stunned when they saw Mo Yunqi act in this way. As he gazed at Mo Yunqi, who'd matured quite a bit, Yi Xian said in a light voice, "Old Mo." Mo Yunqi roared with laughter. "I thought you'd never return." Meanwhile, the elder spoke with a trembling voice, "Vice Dean." Mo Yunqi smiled, "He's Yi Xian, our Dean Yi." The elder's eyes rolled up as he fell to the ground. "We're finished." Meanwhile, a man suddenly charged into the hall. He was stunned when he saw Yi Xian, and then he charged forward and hugged Yi Xian. "Bandit Yi." It was Bai Zai. Bai Zai let go of Yi Xian, and then he punched Yi Xian's chest while his eyes were slightly red. "I thought you'd forgotten all of us." Yi Xian smiled, "Of course not." Meanwhile, a woman suddenly walked in from outside, and she was holding a drumstick in her hand. Jianji. Jianji fell silent for a moment when he saw Yi Xian, and then he said, "I'll leave dinner to you." Yi Xian roared with laughter, "All right. No problem." At night, Yi Xian was cooking in the academy's cafeteria while Jianji stood on guard and stole some food from time to time. Mo Yunqi was in charge of washing the vegetables. Bai Zai was in charge of chopping the firewood. Tuoba Yen watched silently from the side. Meanwhile, a voice suddenly resounded from outside, "You don't mind adding a pair of chopsticks, right?" Yi Xian turned around and saw a woman standing outside the hall. Jiangjiu. Moreover, she wore a set of clean white armor. Yi Xian smiled, "Of course not." Jiangjiu walked over to Yi Xian. "Take a look at my saber." Yi Xian immediately withdrew the silver saber. Jiangjiu looked at the silver saber for a long time, then he smiled and said, "I forgive you." Yi Xian said softly, "Thank you." At this moment another voice resounded from outside the hall. "How can I be missing?" A familiar voice. Yi Xian turned around and saw a man. Imosia. Imosia looked at Yi Xian. "Brother Yi, long time no see." Yi Xian smiled slightly. "Brother Im, a long time no see." Imosia laughed and walked into the house. Yi Xian was about to continue cooking when footsteps suddenly resounded from outside the hall. There were quite a lot of people. Yi Xian turned around and was stunned when he saw who it was. Enlanxiu. Lian Wanli. Zhang Wenxiu. Xiao Dao. Jian Zizai. Second floor guru. And the 9th floor. They were all here. Looking at these people in front of him, Yi Xian felt like he was in a dream. After a long time he smiled slightly. "They're all here." His eyes were a little wet. The 9th floor walked in front of Yi Xian and laughed. "I didn't expect to meet you in this way. Actually, I didn't want to come because you're so much stronger than me now. I can't show off in front of you, it's so annoying." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Be careful of being struck by lightning." The 9th floor laughed and patted Yi Xian's shoulder lightly. "Drink a few more cups later." Yi Xian nodded, "Okay." At this moment the 2nd floor guru walked in front of Yi Xian and said with a smile, "Ever since I left you my life has been much more comfortable." Yi Xian smiled, "I sent someone to find you." The 2nd floor guru nodded, "I know. It's just that you're moving too fast, I can't help you anymore." Yi Xian said softly, "I'll always remember that you've helped me a lot." The 2nd floor guru smiled, "Can I ask you for a favor later?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "Just ask." The 2nd floor guru smiled slightly, "I won't stand on ceremony." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Don't stand on ceremony." The 2nd floor guru glanced around, "I won't take up your time." With that she retreated to the side. At this moment, Zhang Wenxiu walked in front of Yi Xian and Yi Xian said softly, "Wenxiu." Zhang Wenxiu blinked, "How many of the women here have the kind of relationship with you that we have?" Yi Xian. After an hour, everyone sat around the table and Yi Xian had made more than 30 dishes. Just as everyone was about to eat, a voice suddenly sounded from outside the door, "Brother! Brother!" Hearing this voice, Yi Xian's body trembled slightly and he turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. Yiling. Yiling walked in front of Yi Xian and said with a smile, "How can I be missing?" Yi Xian hugged Yiling and he hugged Yiling tightly. He was afraid that this was a dream. Therefore he also activated the sword domain, but reality told him that this was not a dream, it was real. These people in front of him were all real. Not a single one of them was fake. Including Yiling. They were all real. Yi Xian looked at Yiling and said softly, Ling, you seem to have grown up. Yiling said softly, brother, you seem to have aged a little. Yi Xian lightly scratched Yiling's little nose and said with a smile, your brother will always be the most handsome. Yiling hugged Yi Xian lightly and said with a trembling voice, brother, I miss you very much. Yi Xian hugged Yiling tightly and said softly, me too. But I don't dare to go find you, because there are too many dangers around me. I don't want to drag you down. Yiling hugged Yi Xian tightly and said, this time I won't leave. Even if we die, we will die together, okay? Yi Xian smiled and said, okay. We will never be separated again. At this time, another woman appeared outside the hall, and when Yi Xian saw that woman, he was stunned at first and then tears gushed out of his eyes. Yasushi Higashi. The undying Imperial Clan's clan leader, Yasushi Higashi. Yasushi Higashi looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, there are too many people, so I have to come alone. Yi Xian said with a trembling voice, Patriarch. This. Yasushi Higashi walked into the hall and said with a smile, let's eat first. Yi Xian was a little confused. After a while he stopped thinking about those things that he couldn't understand. Let's eat. The cafeteria was very lively. Yi Xian was very happy. Everyone was here. Yasushi Higashi was still alive, which meant that everyone else was also alive. Late at night, Yi Xian left the cafeteria and went to the roof of the cafeteria where a bright moon hung in the sky. There was a woman sitting on the roof. Daoist. Yi Xian walked to Daoist and said softly, is this all true? Daoist looked at the bright moon and said with a smile, it's true. Yi Xian looked at Daoist and said, the immortal Imperial Clan is not destroyed. Daoist said with a smile, if I say that they are not destroyed, will you be happy? Yi Xian nodded. Daoist smiled, they are not dead. Yi Xian shook his head, but I saw them self-destruct. Daoist said with a smile, do you remember what I told you before? Yi Xian was a little confused. What? Daoist blinked. If you don't remember, then forget it. When you remember, you will understand why they are still alive. Yi Xian was about to say something, but Daoist suddenly put a wine glass in Yi Xian's hand, and then she also took a wine glass and lightly clinked it with Yi Xian's and said with a smile, happy birthday. Happy birthday. Yi Xian was stunned. Birthday? Is today my birthday? Yi Xian's mind went blank. That was because he had never celebrated his birthday since he was young. No, he didn't even know his birthday. P.S. These 2 days, because Yi Xian was too miserable, I was scolded very miserably. Everyone said that Yi Xian did not have it easy, so they might as well let him die. And Daoist, no matter what, it's my fault for not writing it well enough. I'd like to take tomorrow off. I want to be a big magic sword for a day, relax, adjust my mentality and reflect on myself while I'm at it. I also want to look for inspiration. Please approve. Thank you. Chapter 1639. Under the moonlight, Yi Xian and Daoist sat quietly. Yi Xian looked at the moonlight in the sky. At this moment he suddenly felt that everything was unreal. Daoist smiled. It will be dawn soon. Yi Xian said in a low voice. Will everything disappear? Daoist turned to look at Yi Xian and smiled. Do you think that you are dreaming? Yi Xian nodded. Daoist suddenly pinched Yi Xian's arm. Does it hurt? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Daoist smiled. She looked at the moon in the sky and whispered. I want to talk about some principles. Are you willing to listen? Yi Xian nodded. Daoist smiled. Only when you have lost something will you know how to cherish it. When you have not lost anything, you will not cherish what you have in front of you. Because you will think that everything you have is a given. You should have heard of this principle. But those who have not lost something will not understand this feeling. Yi Xian nodded. I understand now. Daoist suddenly smiled. I am going to say something harsh. Are you willing to listen? Yi Xian nodded. I am willing to. Daoist smiled mischievously. Very harsh. Yi Xian looked at Daoist. It's fine. Daoist smiled. She raised her glass and Yi Xian did the same. The two clinked their glasses gently and drank it in one gulp. Daoist lay on the ground. She crossed her legs. She looked at the sky and smiled. I have investigated you and your father. Do you know the biggest difference between you and your father? Yi Xian shook his head. Daoist smiled. The biggest difference between you and him is that he has never admitted defeat. He has never compromised. He has never accepted his fate. No matter how miserable it was, no matter how painful it was, he still endured it. He had been defeated before, he had been in pain, and he had been even more miserable. However, he had never accepted his fate, nor had he ever admitted defeat. Most importantly, he had gone from ordinary to invincible. Deep in his heart, he had never relied on others. Of course, it was also because he had no one to rely on, but it was also because of this that his heart was incomparably strong. He's very, very ruthless, more ruthless than anyone I've ever met. He's not just ruthless to others, he's ruthless to himself. As she spoke, she turned to look at Zhou Xian. You were at your best when you were in Qingqing. At that time you didn't rely on anyone, you only believed in yourself. But later on, along with the appearance of that woman in a plain dress, your mentality gradually changed. This change was fatal. Because at any time you will not really despair. Why? Because the plain-dressed woman was here. She is invincible, your father is invincible, so you have nothing to fear. Zhou Xian was silent. Daoist smiled. I know that most of your karma comes from others, including your disaster constitution, which is also because of your father and your sister. However, have you ever thought about what would happen if you didn't have them? Without them, it would take you at least 10 years to walk out of this firmament world. In other words, without them, the current you would at most be at the Dharma controlling realm or even lower. It's not that your talent isn't good, nor is it that you don't work hard enough. It's just that this small place can only let you reach this realm. As she spoke, she picked up the wine glass beside her and took a small sip. Then she continued, however, because of them, you were extraordinary from the beginning. For example, you have the plain-dressed woman as your path protector. She taught you the way of the sword Dao and she guided you. You have the powerful crazy demon bloodline and you have many benefactors such as that area, that little white, the forces that your father left in this universe such as the sword sect. Many people spent hundreds of thousands of years to reach the mortal extinguishing realm. However, you reached it when you were only in your 20s. As she said this, she glanced at Zhou Xian and smiled. Do you know how difficult it is to fight alone without anyone's help? It's very difficult. There are too many unfairness in this world. You once said that when some people are born, their starting point is the ending point of others. Do you know that your birth was exactly like that? In just a dozen years, you, Green City Yi family ancestral hall. Ancestors, Zhou Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on, Zhou Xian's position as the crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The person who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a young man with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi family's elders. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Zhou Xian's biological sister. When she heard that the family wanted to remove Zhou Xian from his position, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Zhou Xian is the crown prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a family matter. Why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the Great Elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li family over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the family and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet the family is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged. Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder coldly replied, Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi family's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years. Even now he is fighting for the family. The family is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince's position. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Flap. A crisp slap sounded. Yi Ling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she didn't cry. She just held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. This subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I'll need 10 personal guards. You can be my personal guard from now on. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded slightly. Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Understood? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Zhou Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Zhou Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes. His face was dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Zhou Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Zhou Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this moment, Zhou Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Zhou Xian's fist landed on his face. Ping. Zhang Mu felt his head spin and he stumbled and fell. Yi Ling did not stop there. He rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Zhou Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Zhou Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Zhou Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, Prince, save me. Zhou Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Zhou Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Zhou Xian, her tears flowed. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Zhou Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Ping. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Zhou Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Zhou Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides there were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling and she was Zhou Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Zhou Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and asked timidly, Great Elder, my brother Zhou Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the Great Elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. Once again, she bowed to the elders. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan for the rights to the mine. He is fighting for the clan and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged. Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the prince's position and it's everyone's wish. What are you shouting for?" As he spoke he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and said with a smile, "What's your name?" The guard quickly bowed. "This subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded, "You're not bad. After I become the prince I'll need 10 personal guards. From now on you'll be my personal guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through water and tread on fire for the prince, even if it means death. Yi Lang nodded, "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Do not hold back. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang and when he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and he suddenly stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Zhou Xian who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Zhou Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Within the ancestral hall, all the elders began to frown. The great elder's eyes narrowed and his face darkened. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Zhou Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Zhou Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time Zhou Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Zhou Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, barking, "Your man." As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Chapter 1640. Between Daoist and Xianxia, who won? No one knew. Daoist didn't immediately disappear with Yi Xian and the others. Instead he slowly flew through the air. Daoist looked down and smiled. "Look at the beautiful mountains and rivers." Everyone looked down. The mountains were connected to each other, stretching endlessly. It was a magnificent sight. Daoist smiled. "What do you think?" Yi Xian said softly. "It's good to be alive." Daoist smiled. "The world is too difficult, but there are also many beautiful things and people in it." Yi Xian turned to look at Yi Ling and the others and smiled. At this moment he felt very happy. The people he liked were all here. This was very happy. In the past he felt that his life was very tiring and miserable. However, he neglected one thing. That was, the people he loved and the people who loved him. Yi Xian were still here. Daoist said again, "When a person comes to the world, other than suffering, there are other things." Yi Xian suddenly said softly, "Daoist, can we talk to the alien race?" Daoist smiled. "Talk about what?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Peace." Daoist shook his head and sighed. "Fool, have you ever seen an emperor talk to a beggar? This analogy isn't very appropriate. For example, a dog wants to be on equal footing with a human, and it wants to be on equal footing with a human. Will the human agree?" She paused for a moment and continued, "In any place, in any world, only the strong are respected. Without strength, even a dog is unwilling to pay attention to you." Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. Did you talk to your master? Dao Yi nodded. Yes. However, he failed. The alien race gave him two choices, either to die or to die. Hearing this, Yi Xian frowned. They didn't give him a way out? Dao Yi smiled. That's right. In the eyes of the alien dimensional race, humans are inferior life forms that don't have the qualifications to talk to them. Yi Xian was silent for a moment. He wanted to say something but hesitated. Dao Yi stopped. She looked at Yi Xian and smiled. You want to ask for help from that lady in plain dress? Yi Xian said solemnly. Can I? Dao Yi shook his head. Don't ever think like that. The alien dimensional race can't defeat her, but they have a way to stall her. What will you do once she is held back? Moreover, based on my understanding of her, she doesn't care about this universe at all. From a certain point of view, she is even more dangerous than the alien dimensional people. What the alien dimensional people want is to occupy this universe, and that sister of yours, if she's in a bad mood, she might directly destroy this universe. As she spoke, she shook her head again. Little fellow, you don't understand her at all. She's a person who is extremely indifferent to life. Moreover, at her level, the universe, the myriad of things, and the living beings were all meaningless. Why? Because she had already transcended everything. Just like an immortal, do you think he would care about time? No, he wouldn't care because he's immortal, his lifespan is unlimited. Or perhaps, in the secular world, does money have any meaning to him? Of course not. In his eyes, money is just a bunch of numbers. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. Dao Yi suddenly smiled. Do you know who's the biggest obstacle in your growth? Yi Xian shook his head. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. It's your father and sister. Yi Xian frowned. Why? Dao Yi smiled. Because at any time, you will always have a reliance on them in the depths of your heart. Why did your father let you live? Why did your sister leave? Do you really think she couldn't sense my existence in the undying Emperor clan? Do you really think she can't find us? Hearing this, Yi Xian was stunned. That's right. Really can't find the laws of the universe? Really can't find them? With her strength, she can destroy the universe with a single slash. Can she really not find the laws hiding in this universe? No. She can definitely find them. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. I understand what you mean. Dao Yi smiled. In the next few years you might be miserable. You don't mind, right? Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. Please be more ruthless. Dao Yi's lips curled up. You asked for it. Yi Xian nodded. The worse the better. Dao Yi smiled. Then he turned to look at Xianxia and the other women. If you're interested, you can go to Master's study room. There are many things to learn there that will be of great help to you. Xianxia nodded. Sure. Yiling looked at Yi Xian and nodded. I'll go too. Dao Yi smiled. Then we'll part ways here. I'm going to take him to another place. Xianxia nodded. Sure. Dao Yi waved his hand. Xianxia and the other women disappeared. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Are you really ready? Yi Xian nodded. I'm ready. Dao Yi smiled. I'll take you to a place you'll never forget. With that, she disappeared with Yi Xian. After a while, Yi Xian and Dao Yi appeared in a vast sea. Yi Xian looked around. The sea was vast and he couldn't see the end of it. Yi Xian was puzzled. This is... Dao Yi smiled. Dead Sea. Yi Xian was curious. Dead Sea. Dao Yi smiled. There are many dangerous places in this universe. This place is one of them. Yi Xian looked at the sea in front of him. Dangerous? Dao Yi nodded. Your realm has already reached the mortal destruction realm. It's not suitable for you to increase it in a short period of time. Since that's the case, we'll start with your fleshly body. Yi Xian was looking forward to it. How do I strengthen it? Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. An ordinary fleshly body is unable to resist the alien races. Only a dimensional fleshly body can resist them. Do you know what a dimensional fleshly body is? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't know. Dao Yi smiled. This world is composed of space, matter and time. Therefore I'll use these three to temper your fleshly body, especially time. Your fleshly body must transcend the limits of time. Only then will you have the ability to resist the alien races. Yi Xian nodded. I'm ready. Dao Yi smiled and punched Yi Xian's chest. Bang. Yi Xian's eyes widened. His fleshly body directly collapsed. Only his soul was left. Yi Xian was completely dumbfounded. Dao Yi smiled. To temper your fleshly body you must first temper your soul. Only a powerful soul can support a fleshly body forged from dimensions. As she spoke, she waved her right hand. Xian's soul directly floated into the sea. The instant his soul entered the sea, Xian's eyes instantly widened. A heart-wrenching and lung-splitting scream suddenly resounded in the sea. In the sea, Xian was about to rush out. At this time Daoist smiled. If you want to come out, I won't stop you. Instead, I'll give you true freedom. In the sea, after hearing Daoist's words, Xian took a deep breath. He forcefully endured it. He knew. If he gave up, Daoist would leave. Daoist continued. I won't force you. You can give up at any time. Really? Xian roared angrily. I won't give up. Daoist blinked. Really? Xian roared. If I say I won't give up, I won't give up. Daoist nodded. Then I'll give you something fierce. As she spoke, she waved her jade-like hand. In an instant, the stagnant water around Xian seemed to come alive. It completely submerged Xian. In the sea, Xian suddenly screamed. Daoist, let's take it step by step. Don't be so fierce. Daoist smiled. You can handle it, right? Xian. At this moment, Xian was really uncomfortable. This was because the seawater could corrode his soul. This kind of corrosion would not really damage his soul. On the contrary, it would stimulate his soul. However, it was really painful. It was 10,000 times more painful than death by 1,000 cuts. The soul was different from the body. The pain that came from the soul was the most real. By the seaside, Daoist sat on a rock. She looked at Xian with a faint smile on her face. In the seawater, Xian was screaming like a pig being slaughtered. However, he did not get up. By the seaside, Daoist's smile grew wider. Initially, she felt that she needed to force Xian. Hence, she wanted to use Xian's closest person to provoke him. However, she now realized that there was no need for that. Rather than forcing a person, it was better to let him understand. Once he comprehended it himself. If you don't force him, he will force himself. Just like that, Xian soaked in the Dead Sea for a whole month. He screamed for a whole month. In fact, during this period, Xian almost could not hold it in anymore. However, in the end, he forced himself to hold it in. If he did not fight for it now, would he really have to rely on his father and sister for the rest of his life? As long as he did not die, even if it was 100 times more painful, he would endure it. He did not want to lose anyone. He did not want to be powerless again. Another month passed. At this moment, Xian was no longer screaming, because he realized that it did not seem to be that painful anymore. Another month passed. At this moment, Xian was lying in the Dead Sea. He was very comfortable. The Dead Sea had no effect on his soul. It was just like taking a bath. At this moment, Daoist suddenly appeared beside Xian. She smiled and asked, "How do you feel now?" Xian smiled and said, "Very comfortable." Daoist smiled and said, "Then we can go somewhere else." Xian jumped up. "I'm looking forward to it." Daoist blinked. "You're not afraid anymore?" Xian fell silent for a while and said, "At the beginning I really wanted to give up because it was too painful. It was so painful that I wanted to die. But now I suddenly realized that the Dead Sea that made me want to die is just like that. Not only is it not painful, it's also quite comfortable to soak my soul in." Looking at Xian for a while, Daoist said with a smile, "Life is like this. Most of the time, you will talk about the things that hurt you so much one day with a smile." As she spoke, she opened her palm. In her palm was a chicken drumstick. Daoist smiled and said, "This is your reward." Xian laughed, picked up the drumstick and started eating. Daoist said, "Let's go to the next place." Xian nodded. "Okay." Just as Daoist was about to leave with Xian, the surrounding space suddenly became strange, as if it had become transparent. Xian's expression became solemn. At this moment, Daoist suddenly appeared in front of Xian. Boom! Daoist's body trembled as if she had suffered a heavy blow. Her body became illusory and blood slowly flowed out from the corner of her mouth. P.S. I wanted to take a break today, but I still updated it. Because I know that no matter if it's good or bad, someone is waiting for me at this time. I hope I'm worthy of the wait. Chapter 1641. The sudden change caused Xian's expression to change greatly. He was about to make a move when the surroundings returned to normal. Daoist turned to look at Xian and smiled. "It's fine now." Xian looked at Daoist. "Just now." Daoist smiled. It's just a small matter. Xian said in a deep voice, you're injured. He could feel that Daoist was a bit weak at the moment. Daoist shook his head. It's nothing serious. Xian looked around and said, are they from the other dimension? Daoist nodded. Xian said in a deep voice, they're already here? Daoist smiled. No, they're still in the other dimension. Xian wanted to ask something else, but Daoist smiled. I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? Xian said, bad news. Daoist looked at Xian. They know of your existence. Xian said in a deep voice, they think I'm God Yi. Daoist smiled. You are. Xian asked softly, what's the good news? Daoist said, the good news is that the seal you left behind can still hold for a while. Xian asked, 5 years. Daoist shook his head. Might not be that long. Xian smiled bitterly. Can't you give me a bit more time? Daoist smiled. Plans can't keep up with changes. But it doesn't matter, there's still time. Let's go. Let's go to the next place. Having said that, she disappeared with Xian. Not long after, Xian followed Daoist to the depths of a starry sky. When they arrived at this starry sky, Xian felt as though he had stepped into an ice house, and the coldness penetrated his bones. Daoist led Xian away. The further they walked, the colder it became. Xian could not help but ask, Daoist, where is this place? Daoist smiled and said, the coldest place in the universe. Xian frowned. The coldest place? Daoist nodded. Absolute zero, there's no place colder than here. Even a transcendent state cultivator would die here. Upon hearing this, Xian's expression instantly changed. Daoist smiled, afraid. Xian nodded. I'm panicking a little. The corners of Daoist's mouth lifted slightly. This place is a good place to train your soul. Xian hesitated for a moment and then he said, is it to freeze me? Daoist nodded and then she stopped and said, I'll teach you a cultivation technique for the soul. Circulate this cultivation technique and move forward in a while. The further you go, the more benefits you'll obtain. Remember, I won't force you to continue and you can stop at any time. As she spoke, she tapped the center of Xian's forehead with her finger. Bang! A huge amount of information instantly surged into Xian's mind. A short while later, Daoist withdrew her finger and said, go. Xian turned around and gazed into the distance, but there was only darkness at the end of his vision. He could not see anything. Xian fell silent for a moment, and then he walked slowly towards the distance. Daoist gazed at Xian and no one knew what she was thinking. The further he walked, the colder Xian felt. However, when he circulated the cultivation technique that Daoist had given him, he noticed that his soul seemed to be absorbing something. Around 2 hours later, Xian's entire body was trembling. It's too cold. It's so cold that it's abnormal. Xian turned around to look at Daoist and Daoist smiled. You can give up at any time. Xian grinned. In your dreams. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly sped up. Run. At this moment he was no longer walking. Not by walking but by running. As he ran, Xian's soul started to freeze, and he felt like his consciousness was gradually becoming blurry. As for his soul, he was on the verge of not being able to feel his own existence. However, Xian was still running. He had no way out and he didn't want to. It didn't take long for Xian to slow down. It wasn't that he wanted to slow down, but he really couldn't run anymore. He was getting slower and slower. Before long, every step that Xian took seemed to be extremely heavy. Most importantly, his soul was slowly turning illusory. It was going to disappear. Not far behind Xian, Daoist was watching. In fact, she was feeling perturbed. Although she said that she wouldn't force Xian, she was really afraid that Xian would give up. It was too difficult to persevere. However, it was very easy to give up. The cultivation technique that she taught Xian had 2 functions. The first was to absorb the elemental energy in this world to strengthen his soul. The second function was to protect his soul. Although he would be in great pain, the cultivation technique would ensure that his soul wouldn't dissipate no matter what. The longer Xian persisted, the more benefits he would receive. If Xian gave up, then Xian's state of mind would instantly collapse. Because once a person gave up for the first time, there would be a second time, a third time. If Xian really gave up, then Daoist's existence would be meaningless. Daoist looked at Yi Xian, who was walking like a snail, and said softly, "Master, I believe you." In the distance, Yi Xian's pace was getting slower and slower. His eyes were staring into the distance, and there was only one thought in his mind. As long as Yi Xian was alive, he would continue. As long as he didn't die, he would continue. Yi Xian's pace was getting slower and slower. Sometimes he would only take one step after an hour. However, he was still walking. Just like that, 3 days passed. And in 3 days, Yi Xian had only taken less than 10 steps. At that moment, he only had one thought in his mind: continue. However, his consciousness was getting more and more blurry. 10 days passed. At that moment, Yi Xian had stopped at the same spot for 3 days. For 3 days, he hadn't taken a single step. Not far behind Yi Xian, Daoist was staring at Yi Xian. She had been staring at him for more than 10 days. Her eyes had never left him. At that moment, she was getting more and more nervous. Just like that, another 10 days passed. And Yi Xian still hadn't taken a single step. Another 3 days passed, and Yi Xian still hadn't taken a single step. Seeing this, Daoist slowly walked towards Yi Xian. That's enough. At that moment, Yi Xian suddenly took another step. With this step, Yi Xian's soul surged like a tidal wave, and waves of soul force rippled in all directions. Daoist was stunned on the spot. At that moment, Yi Xian continued to walk forward. Daoist looked at Yi Xian, and the corners of her lips curled up. After a while, Yi Xian disappeared in the depths of the starry sky. After a long time, Yi Xian suddenly lay down. At this moment, Daoist appeared beside him. Daoist looked down at Yi Xian and smiled. "Tired?" Yi Xian blinked his eyes. "Not tired." Daoist smiled. "Congratulations, you've succeeded." Yi Xian was confused. "Succeeded?" Daoist nodded. "You are now in the center of this star area. This is the coldest place. Even a supreme god would not be able to survive here. Even a supreme expert will die here. Unless this supreme expert has an indestructible will." Yi Xian asked, "Indestructible will?" Daoist smiled. "Actually, besides the body and soul, a person also has a will. Your will was very strong in the past, but you've never broken through your limits. Just now you broke through your limits. The reason you don't feel cold now is because your will has taken form and it's protecting your soul." Yi Xian immediately stood up, and then he opened his palm and a sword appeared in it. As he held the sword in his hand, Yi Xian instantly felt slightly different. It was an indescribable feeling, but it was definitely different. Daoist smiled. "Leave behind a strand of sword energy." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he swung his sword lightly, causing a strand of sword energy to appear. The strand of sword energy didn't vanish. Daoist smiled. "Do you remember the sword energy your father left behind?" Yi Xian nodded. Daoist said, "Then do you know why his sword energy was able to remain for tens of thousands of years or even hundreds of thousands of years? Moreover, it's still so strong?" Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. "Sword Dao will." Yi Xian nodded. "Yes. This strand of sword energy you left behind can exist for at least 100,000 years. If there's no outside interference, then it can exist for even longer." Yi Xian gazed at Daoist. "Have I become stronger now?" Daoist smiled. "Of course. Unless your opponent is much stronger than you, otherwise, it's extremely difficult for them to destroy your sword energy and sword energy." Yi Xian grinned. "If I knew this would happen, I would have come here earlier to force myself." Daoist nodded. "If a person is willing to be ruthless and force himself, then he will notice that he is actually very outstanding." As she spoke, she glanced at the surroundings and said, "Now we can start cultivating your body. Your will has attained the indestructible will, so it'll be much easier for you to cultivate this dimensional body." Yi Xian glanced at Daoist. "Your main objective is to make my will indestructible and not my soul?" Daoist said with a smile, "You guessed wrong. I brought you here just to let you cultivate your soul, but I didn't expect that under a freak combination of factors, you would break through the limit of your will. I have to say this is an unexpected surprise." Yi Xian smiled. "Then let's begin." Daoist waved her lily-white hand and in an instant the two disappeared. Not long after, Yi Xian and Daoist appeared in a strange space. Seeing his surroundings, Yi Xian was stunned. He had been to this place before. This place was exactly the same as the world inside the hidden armor. Daoist softly said, "This is a world that Master created, imitating the alternate dimension. However, it's too different from the real alternate dimension. Of course, for Master to be able to do this, I have to say it's really terrifying. Xian looked up and saw some white dots. Daoist smiled. Those are the transmission points to the alternate dimension. Ming and the others are over there. Xian looked at Daoist. You two don't get along well? Daoist nodded. Very. Xian hesitated, then said, What's Ming's attitude towards me? Daoist smiled. Don't worry, she won't be your enemy. Xian nodded. That's good. Daoist looked around. The dimension of this place can be said to be the limit of this universe. We will now use this dimension to cultivate your body. Xian asked, How? Daoist smiled. Devour this dimensional world. Xian. Chapter 1642. Devour this dimension. Xian was dumbfounded. Seeing Xian's surprised look, Daoist smiled. Let me put it in another way. I will let you become one with this dimension. Xian asked in a deep voice, Will devouring this dimension affect the outside world? Daoist shook her head. No. This is only a passageway leading to the otherworldly dimension, so its disappearance won't have any effect. However, once the seal on the otherworldly dimension is broken in the future, it will be directly connected to our universe. However, even if this place exists, it won't affect them much. Xian nodded. I understand. Daoist suddenly said, Do you still remember the books I showed you? Xian asked, Will those books be helpful to my body cultivation? Daoist smiled. Very helpful. Saying so, she suddenly pointed at the space between Xian's eyebrows. Boom. Xian's clothes instantly turned into ashes. Completely naked. Feeling a cold breeze on his crotch, Xian's expression changed. Daoist smiled. Now listen to my instructions. The process will be a bit painful, but it shouldn't be a problem for you. Xian nodded. Okay. Next, Xian began to cultivate his dimensional body. As Xian cultivated, the strange dimensional space around him gradually began to tremble. After giving instructions, Daoist turned around and left. In the sky above the undying realm, the space suddenly trembled. The next moment, Daoist walked out. At this time, everything in the undying realm had returned to normal. Dongli Jing was still there. At this time, Dongli Jing appeared in front of Daoist. Dongli Jing looked at Daoist. How did you do it? In fact, she also didn't know how she and the others survived back then. Daoist smiled. This is a bit complicated. I won't explain too much. Higashi Yasushi shook his head. You did so much just to help him improve? Daoist said with light smile. I just want him to mature a bit. You really wanted to kill him from the start, didn't you? Higashi Yasuo suddenly asked. Daoist nodded. Higashi Yasushi asked again, Then why did you change your mind? Daoist was silent for a long time before he smiled and said, Because I found out that he and Master have become one. He is Master, Master is him. If I kill him, Master will also die. Dongli Jing asked in a deep voice, What do you know about the alien race? Daoist nodded. Understood. Higashi Yasushi looked at Daoist. How terrifying is he? Daoist suddenly opened her palm, revealing an ant slowly crawling on her palm. Daoist looked at the ant and said with a smile, The other dimensional people in our eyes are like humans in the eyes of ants. Although this is very frustrating, it is the truth. Higashi Yasushi said in a deep voice, Your master once sealed the other dimensional people. Daoist blinked. Master's not a human. Hearing this, Higashi Yasushi's pupils shrank. Not a human. Daoist smiled. To be precise, he is half a human. Higashi Yasushi asked again, Did he fail? Daoist nodded. He did not fail. It can only be said that he stalled for time. Higashi Yasushi said, He delayed for more than 100,000 years. Daoist shook his head. You are wrong. He only delayed for 10 years. 10 years. Higashi Yasushi frowned. 10 years. Daoist said softly, In our universe, time is uncontrollable and irreversible. But in the alien dimension it is possible. More than 100,000 years have passed here, but in the alien dimension they can shorten the time to 12 years. Hearing this, Higashi Yasushi's expression gradually became solemn. Do we have no chance at all? Daoist said with a smile, Yes. That is, to let Master seal them again. However, it is more difficult than before. Because the alien dimension has already discovered him. Moreover, the alien dimension is even stronger than before. Saying this, she walked in front of Higashi Yasushi and took out an ancient book. Miss Yasushi, you are a person worthy of respect. This is a small gift from me. If Master wins in the future, this item will completely change the fate of your undying Emperor clan. If you lose, everything will be over. Saying this, she turned around and left. Higashi Yasushi looked at Daoist. My undying Emperor clan wishes to fight alongside him. Daoist stopped and said softly, Miss Yasushi, forgive me for being blunt. If I give your undying Emperor clan 100 years, you won't even be qualified to be cannon fodder in front of the alien dimension. After saying that, she disappeared. Higashi Yasushi remained silent for a long time. After leaving the undying Emperor clan, Daoist went to the Void Realm. Zhou Xian looked at Daoist. Do you have any instructions? Daoist smiled. Your nothingness tribe has regained its freedom. Regained its freedom? Zhou Xian frowned. What do you mean? Daoist smiled. What I mean is that your nothingness tribe has regained its true freedom. However, don't devour any more worlds. Live well. Saying this, she turned around and left. Zhou Xian suddenly said, Don't we need to target Zhou Xian anymore? Daoist waved her hand. There is no need. After saying that, she disappeared. Zhou Xian furrowed his brows. Daoist returned to Zhou Xian's side. Currently, Zhou Xian did not have a physical body, only a soul. Daoist glanced at Zhou Xian and smiled. Then she turned around and walked towards the white dots of light. Soon, Daoist passed through the white dots of light and arrived in a starry sky. As soon as Daoist appeared in this starry sky, the Time Law appeared in front of her. The Time Law looked at Daoist with an unfriendly expression. Daoist looked at the black vortex in the distance. At this moment, a woman walked out of it. It was Ah Ming. At this moment, there was blood at the corner of Ah Ming's mouth. Moreover, there was a deep wound on the right side of her face. When she saw Daoist, Ah Ming's eyes turned cold. What are you trying to do? Obviously, they knew what Daoist had done to Zhou Xian. Daoist smiled. Ah Ming, are you feeling more and more strained lately? Ah Ming remained expressionless. What does it have to do with you? Daoist looked at Ah Ming and smiled. Ah Ming, you can't defend it. Ah Ming stared at Daoist. Even if I can't defend it, I will. Daoist shook her head. All right. You defend it. Ah Ming looked at Daoist. What are you trying to do? Daoist smiled. I came to find you this time because I need your help. Ah Ming sneered. Send you to hell? If that's the case, I'm very willing. Daoist said, Help Master. Help Master. Ah Ming frowned. Daoist looked at the black vortex and said softly, Ah Ming, the extra-dimensional people have discovered Master. Ah Ming's pupils shrank. How is that possible? Daoist smiled. You're underestimating the extra-dimensional people. Although they can't break through Master's seal, it doesn't mean that their peak experts can't come to this world through another method. Ah Ming asked in a deep voice. The injuries on your body were caused by the extra-dimensional people? Daoist nodded. Ah Ming looked at Daoist. Why did you betray Master back then? Daoist smiled. I'll explain this to you in the future. Right now, the most important thing is to deal with the extra-dimensional people and buy some time for Master. Ah Ming was about to speak, but at this time there was a sudden change. Not far from the three women, the black vortex suddenly trembled. Seeing this, Ah Ming narrowed her eyes and slowly clenched her right hand. At this time a phantom floated out. With the appearance of this phantom, the smile on Daoist's face gradually disappeared. The phantom was like a transparent person, and its true appearance couldn't be seen. At this time the phantom suddenly floated in front of Daoist and looked at Daoist. A moment later the phantom suddenly disappeared. Seeing this, Daoist narrowed her eyes. Come back. As soon as she said this, she suddenly grabbed backwards. Bang! With this grab, in the strange space below, a giant hand suddenly appeared above Zhou Xian's head. The giant hand clenched and the space directly distorted into a strange vortex. Zhou Xian, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly raised his head. At this time he saw a strange face that seemed transparent. An extra-dimensional person. The extra-dimensional person stared at Zhou Xian, but Zhou Xian couldn't see its expression. At this time, Daoist appeared in front of Zhou Xian. Daoist coldly looked at the extra-dimensional person. The extra-dimensional person suddenly disappeared, and Daoist immediately pointed her finger forward. Bang! The finger fell and the space immediately turned into nothingness. Bang! Dao Yi retreated rapidly, and while she was retreating, the space in front of Yi Xian suddenly fluctuated strangely. Yi Xian's expression changed greatly, and he slashed down with his sword. The sword ray pierced through the air, but it was completely useless. Yi Xian's pupils shrank because he smelled a trace of death. At this time, Dao Yi suddenly appeared in front of him. Dao Yi stacked her hands together and fiercely slammed them forward. Destroy! Bang! The space in front of Dao Yi and Yi Xian suddenly turned into nothingness. Along with it, time also turned into nothingness. At this time, the figure had already retreated more than 10 zhang away. The figure coldly looked at Dao Yi. Finally, his gaze fell on Yi Xian and he gave him a thumbs up before turning around. So weak. So weak. Saying so, he slowly disappeared. After the figure disappeared, Dao Yi looked at Dao Yi. Don't mind what he said. According to this universe's time, he has lived for at least 1,000,000 years. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, I'm a bit unhappy. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Why? Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. At this moment there was still blood at the corner of Dao Yi's mouth. Not only that, there was a deep fist mark on her abdomen. Seriously injured. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. Do me a favor. Saying so, he approached Dao Yi and whispered a few words. Dao Yi blinked her eyes. Are you sure? Yi Xian nodded. Dao Yi thought for a while and then said, sure. After that, she suddenly disappeared with Yi Xian. In an unknown part of the starry sky, a sword cultivator wearing a white robe was walking slowly. At this moment, the swordsman suddenly turned around. Dao Yi and Yi Xian appeared in front of the swordsman. When the swordsman saw Yi Xian, he was slightly stunned. Then he smiled. You're looking for me? Yi Xian nodded. Big brother, long time no see. The swordsman smiled. What's the matter? Yi Xian sternly said. I know big brother is lonely. I want to find an opponent for big brother. The swordsman looked at Dao Yi and shook his head. If this girl's main body is here, I might be a bit interested. But, is she your friend? Yi Xian nodded. The swordsman smiled. All right. She's actually not that weak. Dao Yi. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly pulled the swordsman's arm and said, Big brother, let's go. After saying so, he directly disappeared with the swordsman and Dao Yi. When the three of them reappeared, they were already in front of the black whirlpool leading to the alternate dimension. Yi Xian pointed at the black whirlpool. Big brother, you go there. It's fun there. The swordsman looked at the black whirlpool. A moment later, his eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. Interesting. Yi Xian nodded. Very interesting. The swordsman patted Yi Xian's shoulder. I'm going. After saying so, he walked toward the black whirlpool. When he arrived in front of the black whirlpool, Yi Xian suddenly said, Big brother, can you leave me a strand of sword chi? Just treat it as a souvenir. The swordsman hesitated for a moment. Then he pointed with his finger and a strand of sword chi landed in front of Yi Xian. Little guy, see you later. After saying so, he directly disappeared into the black whirlpool. Yi Xian placed the strand of sword chi in front of the black whirlpool and turned to look at Dao Yi. With this strand of sword chi suppressing us, they definitely won't be able to come over in a short period of time, right? Dao Yi was silent. Yi Xian walked to Dao Yi's side and whispered, Is this considered cheating? Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian hurriedly said, I didn't ask my big brother to fight the alternate dimension. As for whether he wants to fight or not, that's his business. It has nothing to do with me. Dao Yi. P.S. The holiday is coming to an end. Did everyone have fun? Chapter 1643. Dao Yi rolled his eyes at Yi Xian, then shook his head. Slippery fellow. Yi Xian grinned. As if he had thought of something, he said in a deep voice, Dao Yi, isn't there a seal? How did the aliens get through the seal and come to us? Dao Yi turned to look at the vortex, then said softly, Because the seal has been loosened. The seal had been loosened. Yi Xian looked at the black vortex. How long will it take for them to get here? Dao Yi smiled. With this sword aura we can hold on for a while longer. 5 years shouldn't be a problem. However, once the seal is completely gone, this sword aura won't be able to stop them. This strand of sword chi can only prevent them from crossing over for a few years. 5 years. Yi Xian said softly, 5 years later I'll fight against the aliens? Dao Yi nodded. Yi Xian was puzzled. Did God Yi fail back then? Dao Yi nodded again. Yi Xian said in a low voice, I'll study for 5 years. Can I be stronger than God Yi back then? Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Don't you have confidence in yourself? Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. Indeed. At present he couldn't even defeat the universal laws. Could he be stronger than the owner of the universal laws, God Yi, just by studying for 5 years? Impossible. Although he was confident, he wasn't arrogant. Dao Yi smiled. Under normal circumstances I definitely can't. Yi Xian asked, abnormal? Dao Yi nodded. Yi Xian was curious. How abnormal? Dao Yi blinked, then said playfully, it's a secret for now. Yi Xian was about to speak, but a voice suddenly came from the side. Did you guys automatically ignore the two of us? Yi Xian turned to look to the side. There were 2 women there. Law of Destiny and Law of Time. At this moment the 2 women were also looking at Yi Xian. Ming suddenly walked in front of Yi Xian. She stared directly at Yi Xian as if she wanted to see through Yi Xian. It was a little strange yet a little familiar. After a long time, Ming withdrew his gaze, and there was a trace of indescribable complexity in his eyes. We've truly become one. At that moment she was certain that Yi Xian and God Yi's fate had truly merged into one. The current Yi Xian was God Yi. If Yi Xian died, God Yi would disappear as well. Ming turned to look at Dao Yi. How did this happen? Although she already knew that Yi Xian and God Yi's fates had merged into one, she did not know why that was the case. Under normal circumstances Yi Xian was Yi Xian and God Yi was God Yi. That was because God Yi carried his memories when he reincarnated. Even if God Yi had yet to awaken, God Yi should be a separate destiny entity instead of merging with Yi Xian. Dao Yi chuckled. Because reincarnating with memories is what Master hates the most. It's also against the rules he set back then, so, do you understand? Ming slowly closed her eyes. She naturally understood. Although God Yi had reincarnated, he did not choose to reincarnate with his memories. In other words, he was Yi Xian. He had truly reincarnated. As if thinking of something, Ming said, no, if he didn't reincarnate with his memories, why can I feel his existence? It's very vague, but it's definitely there. Please continue to the next page. Yes, why is that? Dao Yi said softly, the law of reincarnation did it. She forcefully preserved Master's memories and prevented them from dissipating. Ming frowned. In other words, if Master's memories are restored, Dao Yi shook his head. That's impossible. Ming was puzzled. Why? Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian and said softly, there are 2 reasons. First, Master is unwilling. Second, if the law of reincarnation really wants Master to be reborn, that woman will forcefully kill Master and erase him. Woman. Ming's expression darkened. She naturally knew who Dao Yi was talking about. It was that woman in the plain dress. If that woman was not there, the law of reincarnation might have succeeded. On the side, Time Elemental suddenly looked at Dao Yi. Will he become Master? Dao Yi smiled. He is. Time Elemental glanced at Yi Xian. Then Master's memories. Dao Yi chuckled. It depends on whether this little guy is willing to restore those memories on his own. Yi Xian immediately shook his head. I'm not willing. I don't want to be someone else. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. You're not becoming someone else. God Yi is your past life. There's no conflict between the 2 of you. Yi Xian said, I'm me. I just want to be Yi Xian. Dao Yi smiled. You're still the woman in the plain dress, brother. Yi Xian was speechless. Most of the time he was confused. Who am I? Right then Dao Yi suddenly smiled. Let me clarify for you. When Master was reincarnated, he became the woman in the plain dress, brother. However, at that time he had yet to awaken and the woman in the plain dress was not that powerful. Later there was a problem with the law of reincarnation, causing Master to die before he could awaken. After that, the woman in the plain dress rose and forcefully reversed the cycle of reincarnation to save you. You might be wondering why the woman in the plain dress only recognized you and not Master. At that time Master had yet to awaken, so you were her real brother. She saved the purest of you. The karma between you and her has nothing to do with Master, so she only recognizes you. Yi Xian said solemnly, you're saying that when I was Qing'er's brother, your Master had yet to awaken? Dao Yi nodded. Yes. That's why she saved you and only recognizes you. Of course, Master has nothing to do with her. She will not allow Master's memories to dominate your body because if Master's memories dominate your body, it would be equivalent to erasing you. Master is also unwilling to retain the memories of his past life. That's why you're Master's reincarnation, but a reincarnation without memories. As for Master's past memories, you don't have to be so disgusted because even if you have his memories, you won't become him. In this life you're Zhou Xian. Unless Master erases your memories of this life, you'll always be Zhou Xian. No one can change that. That's because when Master set up the law of reincarnation he set a rule that a person can only live one life. Zhou Xian said softly, I think I understand. God Yi was his past life. However, his past life was unwilling to reincarnate with his memories. Of course it was impossible because Xianxia was there. Zhou Xian felt a little ashamed at that thought. If it wasn't for Xianxia, would he have already been erased? Although his past life was unwilling to reincarnate with his memories, the law of reincarnation did not think that way. As if remembering something, Zhou Xian suddenly said, No, that's not right. Daoist blinked. How is it not right? Please continue to the next page. Right? Zhou Xian looked at Daoist. I'm Xianxia's sister. What should I tell my father? If Xianxia had saved me, it would have been impossible for me to become my father's son. Daoist did not say anything. Zhou Xian looked at Daoist waiting for an answer. After a long time Daoist said softly, I can't tell you about this. You have to let your sister tell your father. Zhou Xian frowned. Why? Daoist smiled. They must have their reasons for not telling you. I can't tell you. Zhou Xian was speechless. Daoist continued, Master's memories are in your body. But don't worry, I won't let you recover them unless you are willing. Of course, even if you are willing, Master might not. He is the one who sets the rules. If he breaks his own rules, he won't let himself become that kind of person. So, you don't have to worry about this. Then she turned to look at Ming and Daoist. If you can contact the law of reincarnation, tell her to stop playing. If she keeps playing, she'll die. Ming shook her head. I can't contact her. She said she was recuperating but she disappeared. I've tried to find her but there's no news. Daoist said softly, forget it. Let her be. Ming suddenly said, Daoist, what's your purpose? Master's death had a lot to do with you. You can't deny it, right? Daoist nodded. I don't deny it. Ming stared at Daoist. Can't you tell me now? Daoist smiled. Indeed I can't. Ming shook her head. I don't believe you. Daoist smiled. Ming, I don't need you to believe me. I'll tell you. I Daoist have only wronged one person in my life and that's Master. Apart from him I don't owe anyone anything. Everything I'm doing now is not to atone for my sins, nor is it to get your forgiveness. Everything I'm doing now is purely because I want Master to live. That's all. Then she turned to look at Zhou Xian. Do you believe me? Zhou Xian nodded. My intuition tells me that he didn't hate you at that time. The smile on Daoist's face gradually disappeared. After a while she smiled. But I really betrayed him. Zhou Xian said, was he sad when you betrayed him? Daoist lowered her head slightly and said softly, no. Zhou Xian looked at Daoist. In other words, he probably knew that you were going to betray him, right? The tears in Daoist's eyes suddenly flowed down. Zhou Xian was about to speak when Daoist suddenly looked at Zhou Xian and smiled. Actually, I'm really bad. As Ming said, when Master raised me he might as well raise a dog. At least a dog won't bite its master. Zhou Xian said in a deep voice, do you want to hear my opinion? Daoist smiled. Yes. Zhou Xian nodded. If my sister wants to kill me no matter the reason I won't hate her. Do you know why? Daoist looked at Zhou Xian. Why? Zhou Xian smiled. Because in my heart my sister is the most important, more important than my life. There's only one reason why he doesn't hate you. You're very important to him, more important than his life. Even if you really betrayed him he won't be angry with you. Daoist suddenly laughed. She laughed and then cried. End of this chapter. Chapter 1644. Looking at the tearful Daoist, Zhou Xian sighed in his heart. He didn't know what happened between Daoist and God Yi back then, but he knew it wasn't that simple. Especially Daoist's actions. He felt it was strange. She did betray them. In other words, she was definitely on the side of the alien race back then. But now she was helping him. Whose side was she on? Zhou Xian didn't ask because he knew Daoist definitely didn't want to tell him. At that moment, Daoist suddenly smiled. Don't be unreasonable. Then she looked at Xian. Start training your body. Xian nodded. I'll go back to Qingzhou for a bit. Can I do it for an hour? Daoist smiled. Sure. Xian looked at Ming and Daoist, then nodded and turned to leave. After Xian left, Daoist turned to Ming. Summon them in Master's name. Ming shook her head. I don't believe you. She still didn't believe Daoist. If Daoist could betray once, she could definitely betray again. As if knowing what Ming was thinking, Daoist suddenly smiled. Did you see that alien race? Ming's expression sank. She understood Daoist's meaning. The fact that alien race could appear here meant that the seal's effect was getting weaker and weaker. Once the seal disappeared, they would all die. At that moment, Time Law suddenly asked, What do you need us to do? Daoist smiled. Help Master become stronger. Time Law shook her head. Too late. Daoist asked, Then are we just going to wait for death? Time Law was silent. Daoist looked at the two women. Also, tell that Samsara girl to stop playing tricks. If she keeps playing, she'll destroy herself. With that, she turned and left. After Daoist left, Ming softly asked, Do you trust her? After a moment of silence, the law of time said, We can only trust her. Ming nodded. I'll go find them. With that, she turned around and disappeared. The law of time also disappeared. After the girls disappeared, the sword light in front of the black vortex suddenly trembled. After returning from Qingqing, Xian began to crazily devour that strange world. Although he had tricked his big brother into going to another dimension, he knew that with his big brother's temperament he wouldn't destroy the other dimension. Big brother only had one goal, and that was to find experts. Therefore his elder brother going to the alternate dimension would at most cause some trouble there and buy him some time. Under Daoist's guidance, Xian began to devour the surrounding dimensional world bit by bit. The process was painful. But this kind of pain was simply negligible to him. However, this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that he needed to adapt his soul to this dimensional world during the process of devouring. In other words, he needed to fuse his soul with this dimensional world. This was very difficult, because he didn't know much about this dimensional world. But fortunately, with Daoist's guidance and the ancient books he had read, although it was difficult, he could still devour it. It was just that the speed was a bit slow. Just like that, day after day passed. 1 month later, Xian's body slowly appeared. However, his current body was a bit strange. It didn't look like a normal person's body. Another 2 months passed. The dimensional world around Xian had completely disappeared and turned into a land of nothingness. At the same time, his body had completely recovered. However, his current body was extremely strange. It was as if it was made of crystal. When Xian saw his body, he was dumbfounded. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Daoist smiled and said, Dimensional physical body. Your current physical body is a dimensional world. Xian said in a deep voice, This appearance, Daoist said, you can make it return to a normal human body. With a thought, Xian's body returned to normal. At this moment, Daoist suddenly took a step forward and punched Xian's abdomen. Boom. Xian's body trembled violently. The space around him boiled like a tidal wave. But Xian was completely fine. Xian was taken aback and then said, This? Daoist smiled. The current you doesn't need to be afraid of the laws of the universe. Your current physical body is the strongest physical body in this universe. Even the laws of the universe like us can't hurt you. Xian said in a deep voice, So abnormal? Daoist nodded. She gently touched Xian's body and said, This dimensional world has been condensed into your body. Your body not only contains space and matter but also the time dimension. However, you are not familiar with the time dimension. So you can't use the time dimension. As she spoke, she looked at Xian and smiled. Do you want to learn how to control time? Xian nodded vigorously. Daoist's lips curled up slightly. There was a naughty smile on her face. But it's a little painful. Xian said in a serious tone. Please torture me to your heart's content. Daoist suddenly pointed a finger at Xian's forehead. Boom. Xian disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, Xian was already in a space surrounded by specks of light. At this time, Daoist's voice appeared in Xian's mind. This is the world of the time dimension. The extra-dimensional people live in this kind of world. Look behind you. Yi Xian turned around and saw himself and Dao Yi behind him. At this moment, himself was talking with Dao Yi. Suddenly, Dao Yi punched himself in the abdomen. Yi Xian was struck dumb at the sight of that. Wasn't this what happened just now? Dao Yi's voice sounded again. In the world of the extra-dimensional people, the past, present and future are real and can be changed. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, change the past? Change the future? Dao Yi said, that's right. Don't you feel invincible? Yi Xian nodded. If the extra-dimensional people could really do this, then they would be invincible. This daddy can't beat you now, but I can go back to the past and kill you. Thinking of this, Yi Xian felt his scalp go numb. Wasn't this race an invincible existence? At this time, Dao Yi suddenly said, the extra-dimensional people have a suppressive effect on other races because they can reverse time, the past and the future. However, they aren't invincible. There are two ways to deal with them. The first is to destroy the time dimension. If the time dimension is destroyed, it is equivalent to destroying them. Since time is gone, the past and the future will also be gone. However, it is very difficult to destroy the time dimension. Throughout the history of this universe, only 4 people have been able to do it. The former master, your elder brother, your father, and your younger sister. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, is there anyone in the extra-dimensional world who can do it? Dao Yi said, there are. However, there aren't many. Even in the extra-dimensional world, those who can directly destroy time are among the best. Yi Xian's complexion sank. After a while he asked, what about the second method? Dao Yi said, the second method is to use time to kill them. Within a certain period of time, time can only be reversed once. When the opponent reverses time, you will also reverse it. For example, if the opponent goes back to the past, you will also go back to the past. When the opponent goes back to the past, they won't be able to reverse time again within a short period of time. If you kill them during this period of time, they will completely disappear. Yi Xian suddenly asked, what about the future? Can they go back to the future? Dao Yi said with a smile, even if it's an extra-dimensional person, it will be very difficult for them to go back to the future. Yi Xian was somewhat puzzled. Why? This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. Dao Yi explained, you've neglected one point. The future is uncertain, it's unknown, and it's full of diversity. To put it simply, if you do something, it might lead to many consequences. The future is the same. If you make a decision now, it might lead to many futures. Therefore, even if it's an extra-dimensional person, they won't easily go back to the future because the future might not be accurate. Moreover, going back to the future is very likely to reverse the present. This kind of uncertainty and instability is something they are afraid of. The time dimension of the future is a bottleneck for the extra-dimensional people. They can't completely control the future, so much so that they can't freely travel to the future. It can be said that this is also their weakness. Yi Xian said softly, in that case, even if it's an extra-dimensional person, they can't reverse the future, right? Dao Yi said with a smile, you're wrong again. They can go back to the future, but when they do, others will also be in the future. For example, if I want to go back to the future to kill you, when I go back to the future, you will also be in the future. If I can't kill you now, can I kill you in the future? It's very difficult because in the future you might even be stronger than me. If we can't defeat her now, we might not be able to defeat her in the future. Just like that plain-dressed woman, even if the other dimensional people went to the future, they still wouldn't be able to defeat her. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, what if the other dimensional people go back to the past and kill Qing'er when she was a child? If that's the case, won't we be able to kill them? Dao Yi smiled and said, you're not wrong to think that way. However, you've neglected a problem, and that is the dimension of time. If he wanted to return to her past and kill her, he would have to enter her time dimension. With her current strength, she could even erase time. If he entered her time dimension, wouldn't that be courting death? Therefore, if he wanted to kill her, there was only one way, and that was now. If he was stronger than her now, he would be able to kill her. There was no other way. Especially against people like this, don't ever think about the future because her future might be much stronger than yours. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said with a smile, from what you've said, it seems like the other dimensional people aren't invincible after all. Dao Yi said, that's for the woman in the plain dress. For others, like you, can you sever time? If the other dimensional people wanted to kill you, they wouldn't even need to play any fancy tricks. They could just kill you with a single punch. Yi Xian. At this time the space around Yi Xian returned to normal. Dao Yi appeared in front of Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian and said, "From now on, you will begin to cultivate how to control time." Yi Xian nodded. "Alright." Dao Yi took Yi Xian and disappeared. In an unknown starry sky, a swordsman wearing a white robe was slowly walking. After walking for an unknown amount of time, the space in front of the swordsman suddenly trembled strangely, and a phantom appeared in front of him. The phantom said, "Human." The swordsman nodded. The phantom said, "Inferior life form." The swordsman looked at the phantom and slashed out with his sword. Before the phantom could react, the sword pierced through his body. The phantom sneered. "How can you kill me? We other dimensional people exist in the time dimension. You." At this point the phantom's voice suddenly became frightened. "How is this possible? You can actually sever time." The swordsman sheathed his sword and walked in front of the phantom. He glanced at the phantom with a bit of doubt. "Isn't it simple to sever time? Why are you so surprised?" The phantom. "Sever time is a simple matter?" The phantom's head was buzzing. The swordsman walked away. As if thinking of something, he said, "In your world, is it very difficult to sever time?" The phantom asked back. "You think it's simple?" The swordsman glanced at the sword in his hand. "It's quite simple." The phantom. The swordsman asked again, "Are all other dimensional people this week?" The phantom. "P.S. Hard to get a ticket." End of this chapter. Chapter 1645. The dimensional person was dead. Truly disappeared. Because swordsman's sword had directly erased the time dimension. On the contrary, the sword cultivator felt somewhat bored after killing an extra-dimensional being. He was a little disappointed. So weak. That shouldn't be the case. Swordsman looked into the distance and continued to move forward. It had been more than 100,000 years. Only when he met Tianming did he feel like he was reborn. The feeling of having an opponent was truly wonderful. Unfortunately, those two only cared about that little guy. But it didn't matter, the three of them would eventually fight. It was just that it was too boring during this period of time. As if thinking of something, Swordsman turned around and shook his head with a smile. "I really envy that little guy." That little guy was naturally referring to Yi Xian. Being able to be defeated, wasn't that also a kind of happiness? If Yi Xian knew Swordsman's thoughts, what would he think? Swordsman retracted his gaze and continued to walk into the distance. He, the unfettered one, had no other requests. He only wished for life to be a little difficult. He didn't wish for death. He didn't wish for defeat. He only wished for someone to let him use 2 swords. Just 2 swords. Was that a high request? Beside the lake, inside the bamboo house, Yi Xian was sitting cross-legged on the ground. In front of him was Dao Yi. And beside them and Xiaoqi and the others were also there. Everyone was quietly listening to Dao Yi's explanation of time. Dao Yi didn't teach Yi Xian alone, but Yi Xian's friends as well. For example, Xiao and the others, these people were all very outstanding and could become Yi Xian's helpers in the future. Needless to say, Yi Xian and the others were very shocked. This was the first time they had a detailed understanding of time. And if time could be controlled, how terrifying would it be? But what Yi Xian didn't understand was why Dao Yi understood time so well. One must know that Dao Yi didn't understand the laws of time. He didn't ask any more questions. Just like that, about a month later, Dao Yi led Yi Xian and the others into the time dimension. In the time dimension, everyone looked at the people in the outside world as if they were gods looking at all living beings. In the eyes of those in the time dimension, the people outside were like transparent people. This was true dimensional suppression. Because the people in this universe didn't understand time at all, let alone reverse time. Half a month later, Yi Xian and the others began to practice. It was not to destroy time. With their current strength, it was extremely difficult to destroy time. They could only familiarize themselves with time and then control it. In fact, Yi Xian was a little emotional. In the past, he was basically exploring by himself. This kind of exploration was very slow because he had to solve many problems by himself. But now that he had someone to guide him, his cultivation speed would be twice as fast. He could avoid taking too many detours. Most importantly, he could now learn a lot of knowledge that he had never come into contact with before. At the same time, he also understood why he couldn't defeat these universal laws. Compared to these universal laws, he was just like a child in terms of martial arts. By the lake, Dao Yi was playing chess with the law of misfortune. Outside it had begun to drizzle. It often rained in this place. Misfortune raised a chess piece and placed it down. Then he said, Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on Yi Xian's position as the crown prince is removed and Yi Lang will succeed him. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a young man with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. And on both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone looked at the voice and saw a little girl standing at the door. The little girl was about 12 or 13 years old. Her two little hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face was sickly pale and looked a little weak. There was a trace of timidity in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed slightly to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The great elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a matter of the clan. Why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away from me. At this time the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The great elder coldly replied, Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, Young master, Yi Lang inherits the crown prince position. What are you yelling about? As he spoke he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard quickly bowed. Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the crown prince I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the crown prince, even if I have to die 10,000 times. Yi Lang nodded slightly. Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show mercy, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu did not know what he saw, but he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall the elders frowned. The great elder squinted his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger, leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Ping. Zhang Mu felt dizzy and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there. He rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's entire face was a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides there were the Yi clan elders. "Why?" Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a hint of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall as she asked timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, what are you butting in for? Leave." Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince." Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master, Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry and only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. "I'll go through fire and water for the prince and I'll do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment Zhang Mu saw something and suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe and the robe was tattered and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall the elders frowned. The great elder squinted his eyes and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Bang! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there and charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Chapter 1646. Pericelestial. His current sword Dao realm had reached mortal obliteration. Any higher and he would be pericelestial. However, he did not even know what pericelestial was now. It was a little difficult. By the lake, Daoist was lying on the stone steps with her legs crossed, looking a little relaxed. Beside her was Adversity. Adversity said in a low voice, "The one who is most likely to be that fellow beside him is Yi Ling." "Yi Ling," Daoist said softly, "It's her." Adversity said in a low voice, "She sealed all her memories?" Daoist nodded, "Yes." After a long silence, Adversity said softly, "I admire her very much." Daoist smiled, "The depth of her love." Adversity looked at Daoist, "If you were given a chance, would you do it?" Daoist shook his head, "No." Adversity was a little curious. "Why?" Daoist smiled and did not speak. Adversity did not ask again. At this moment it suddenly rained. Adversity looked up into the starry sky. "Are you really not going to give him any hints?" Daoist said softly, "There are no shortcuts on the path of Daoist. He can only rely on himself." Adversity suddenly asked, "What if he can't rely on himself?" Daoist shrugged, "Then it's up to Dad. If there's really no other way, rely on your sister." Adversity was speechless. Cultivation knew no time. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Yi Xian had been sitting quietly in the starry sky for a month. During this month he was completely in meditation. What was God? For a month he had been thinking about this question. He was thinking very seriously. However, no matter how he thought about it, he could not understand it. At this moment Yi Xian deeply felt his own shortcomings. Foundation. Accumulation. He lacked foundation and accumulation. Along the way he had progressed too quickly. As Daoist said, others could reach mortal obliteration after tens of thousands of years, but he had reached it in his 20s. Was there really no problem? Of course there was. He had too little experience, his foundation was too shallow, and he had not gone through the accumulation of time. He was too impetuous. Everything he does he wants to succeed quickly. This was his biggest problem right now. Thinking of this, Yi Xian could not help but smile bitterly in his heart. Walking too fast wasn't entirely a good thing. Yi Xian opened his eyes and looked at the sword in his hand. The worldly realm. What was the mortal realm? It was to be ordinary, to return to simplicity. Really? Why were ordinary swords strong? This was because the ordinary sword was real. When the sword slashed down, it would strike straight at the essence. What about above the mortal sword? Evolve. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian's pupils suddenly shrank. Soul. Soul. Mortal swords could slash the body, but did this spirit entrancement only target the soul? Soul. Yi Xian looked at the sword in his hand and fell into deep thought. At this moment he recalled the battle with the pericelestial powerhouse. As he thought about it, the corners of his lips curled up. Because he realized that the reason why those pericelestial experts could suppress him was because they could suppress the soul. The physical body was only the surface, the soul was the true essence. A person's true death was the disappearance of the soul, not the disappearance of the physical body. As long as the soul existed, the physical body could be reconstructed. The soul was the true essence. Mortal sword slash the physical body, spirit entrancement slash the soul. Thinking of this, Yi Xian suddenly saw the light. Of course, he did not directly reach spirit entrancement, but he was no longer confused, because he already had a direction. Soul. Yi Xian directly took out the soul-suppressing sword and began to communicate with it. He wanted to understand this soul in detail. In addition to communicating with the soul-suppressing sword, he also... This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. He recalled in detail the books about souls that he had read in the bamboo hut. Since spirit entrancement was related to the soul, he naturally wanted to understand this soul. When Yi Xian was studying the soul, Dao Yi only took a glance, but she did not say anything and left. Dao Yi arrived at the entrance of the alternate dimension. In front of the black vortex, the strand of sword chi was still there. However, this strand of sword chi was slightly trembling. Looking at the trembling strand of sword chi, Dao Yi sank into contemplation. After a long time, Dao Yi turned around and left. Turning around, Dao Yi arrived at a vast starry sky. The starry sky was silent. And at the end of the starry sky, a woman wearing a plain dress was slowly walking. The plain dress woman. At this time the plain dress woman stopped. Dao Yi appeared in front of the plain dress woman. She looked at the plain dress woman and said with a smile, "Want to play chess?" The plain dress woman nodded. "Okay." Dao Yi waved her lily-white hand, and a chessboard appeared in front of the two women. Dao Yi played black while the plain dress woman played white. Dao Yi picked up a chess piece and placed it down, saying with a smile, "I'll go first." The plain dress woman's expression was calm. "As you wish." Dao Yi looked at the plain dress woman. "Are you waiting for him?" The plain dress woman nodded. Dao Yi asked, "Can I ask a few questions?" The plain dress woman picked up a chess piece and placed it down. "I can't guarantee an answer." Dao Yi smiled. "What level has Senior reached?" The plain dress woman glanced at Dao Yi. "Invincible." "Invincible." Dao Yi blinked. "Invincible for a certain period of time?" The plain dress woman was expressionless. "Always invincible." Dao Yi was silent. The plain dress woman picked up a chess piece and placed it down. "Is there a problem?" Dao Yi picked up a chess piece, paused for a while, then placed it down, saying with a smile, "Senior, do you know about the alien race?" The plain dress woman said, "Ants." "Ants?" Dao Yi looked at the plain dress woman. "Ants?" The plain dress woman suddenly said, "Don't use your knowledge to measure me. Miss, you know nothing about power." "Nothing." Dao Yi was silent for a while, then smiled. "Senior, the alien race has people who can go to the future. Not only can they go to the future, they can also reverse it." The plain dress woman glanced at Dao Yi. "So what?" Dao Yi looked at the plain dress woman. "Senior, you should know what this means." The plain dress woman suddenly asked, "What is above time?" Hearing this, Dao Yi was stunned. "What is above time?" The plain dress woman looked at Dao Yi. "Is time the limit of this world's power?" Dao Yi's two fingers held the chess piece tightly. After a while she said softly, "Please enlighten me, Senior." The plain dress woman said, "Let me ask another question. In this aspect you and I are not on the same level. Talking is boring." Dao Yi was silent for a while, then placed the chess piece down, saying with a smile, "Senior, the reason you stayed in this universe is to wait for him to grow, right?" The plain dress woman nodded. Dao Yi asked, "You want him to become an expert like you?" The plain dress woman nodded. Dao Yi asked again, "Is that it?" The plain dress woman was silent for a while, then said, "You want to ask if I have any other goals?" Dao Yi nodded. The plain dress woman looked towards the depths of the starry sky. "I want to die. I want to die." The surroundings suddenly went silent. Dao Yi looked at the plain dress woman, and at this moment he suddenly felt a wave of sorrow. Invincible. This woman is too strong. But this strength is a form of loneliness, and it's a form of pain. Where is the limit of the martial Dao? Where is the limit of the sword Dao? What is the plain dress woman pursuing? Is it the limit? It's not the limit of the martial Dao or the sword Dao, it's her. This chapter isn't finished. Please continue to the next page. My own limit. The plain dress woman suddenly raised a chess piece and placed it down. "I want him to leave with me." Dao Yi looked at the plain dress woman. "Where to?" The plain dress woman glanced at the depths of the starry sky and didn't speak. Dao Yi didn't ask any further. After a short moment of silence, Dao Yi asked again, "What if he can't grow?" The plain dress woman spoke softly. "Then I won't leave." Dao Yi came to an understanding when he heard this. The plain dress woman wanted to take Yi Xian with her, but Yi Xian was truly too weak right now. She hoped that Yi Xian would truly grow. Dao Yi didn't ask any further questions and concentrated on the game. Because she noticed that this woman's skill in chess was extremely high. An hour later, the plain dress woman suddenly stood up. You've lost. As soon as she finished speaking, she walked towards the distance. Dao Yi gazed at the chessboard and laughed bitterly. This was the first time in over 100,000 years that she'd lost. Even her master from all those years ago hadn't been able to defeat her in chess. Yet at this moment she'd lost to this plain dress woman. She was a woman with an extremely terrifying intelligence. However, this woman disdained to play with intelligence. Why play with such flashy things when a single strike of the sword can solve it? Meanwhile, the plain dress woman suddenly stopped moving. You probably have more questions. Dao Yi nodded. Do you have any suggestions towards his sword, Dao? The plain dress woman shook her head. No. Dao Yi blinked. Aren't you going to give him some pointers? The plain dress woman thought for a moment, then said softly, My sword Dao isn't suitable for him. He needs to figure out a sword Dao that belongs to him. Dao Yi nodded. I understand. The plain dress woman suddenly said, Tell him that he can deal with the other dimension by himself. If he can deal with the other dimension by himself, I'll come looking for him and give him a reward. Dao Yi asked, What if he can't? The plain dress woman glanced at Dao Yi. I believe in him. As soon as she finished speaking, she walked towards the distance. Behind her, Dao Yi was silent. After walking for a short while, the plain dress woman suddenly said, Miss, time and space can be transformed into each other. Time has never been above space, they're equal. The people of this universe mostly only study space, not time. Therefore, the people of this universe are very weak. While the other dimension only studies time and ignores space, they're also very weak. Without the dimension of space, how can there be the dimension of time? All the dimensions of time are built on the foundation of the dimension of space. If Miss wants to advance further, you must understand this point. Behind her, Dao Yi stared at the plain dress woman, his heart in turmoil. Senior, do you know what would happen if the other dimension knew about this? The plain dress woman lightly smiled. Would they be invincible? Dao Yi was silent for a moment, then said, Senior, what about time and space? The plain dress woman said, Multiple dimensions. Dao Yi frowned. What's multiple dimensions? The plain dress woman was silent for a moment, then said, Even if I explain it to you, you might not understand, so I won't explain. If you have time in the future, learn more and learn less about those fancy things. In my opinion, Miss is no different from an illiterate person. Dao Yi, seeing the plain dress woman gradually walking away, Dao Yi couldn't help but ask, Senior, why do you know so much? The plain dress woman suddenly stopped and turned to look at Dao Yi. Do you think I walk in this starry sky every day just to look at the stars? Miss, I'm also learning. The time, space, and dimensions you discussed with me are things I've been playing with for hundreds of thousands of years. If it wasn't for the fact that you helped my brother, I really wouldn't want to talk about these things with you. It's really too childish and you're deliberately mystifying it, thinking that it's so high and mighty, making me feel awkward. After saying that, as if she was afraid that Dao Yi would ask more questions, she directly disappeared into the depths of the starry sky. Dao Yi had a dumbfounded look on his face. P.S. Did you think that I went to the Great Treasure Sword purely for the sake of it? I went to look for inspiration. You bunch of scum, always misunderstanding me. End of this chapter. Chapter 1647. In the starry sky, Dao Yi remained silent for a long time. At first, she simply thought that the plain-dressed woman's swordsmanship was very powerful. However, she was wrong. The woman's strength was not just due to her swordsmanship. The woman's knowledge had already surpassed this universe and the other dimensional people. Why was the woman so powerful? Why was she getting stronger and stronger? Because she was also studying. Thinking of this, Dao Yi shook her head and smiled. After so many years, this was the first time she was called illiterate. Of course, she could not refute it. In front of the woman, she was indeed illiterate. After a while, Dao Yi turned around and left. Dao Yi returned to the bamboo house by the lake. At that moment, Zhou Xian was crazily studying the ancient books about souls left behind by God Yi. Study. Previously, he had never properly cultivated his soul. Even if he did, he would only devour some souls. He had never systematically cultivated his soul. Now that he had come into contact with the knowledge of souls, he was extremely shocked. Soul. This was a point that he had neglected all this while. Dao Yi glanced at Zhou Xian, who was studying in the distance. She did not disturb Yi Xian. About an hour later, Yi Xian left the bamboo house and arrived at a starry sky. After entering the starry sky, his soul directly left his body. Comprehension. By the lake, a woman suddenly appeared in front of Dao Yi. It was Ah Ming. Beside Ah Ming was the law of time in a woman. The woman was wearing a black robe and a veil. Law of cause and effect. The law of cause and effect looked around. Where's Master? Dao Yi smiled. He's cultivating. Let's not disturb him for now. The law of cause and effect's gaze fell on Dao Yi. What are you trying to do? Dao Yi said, follow me. After saying that, she disappeared with the women. Soon the women arrived at the black vortex that led to the other dimensional world. The law of life was also here. Dao Yi, the law of fate, law of time, law of cause and effect, law of disaster and law of reincarnation. Of the 9 great laws, 6 were gathered here. When the girls saw each other, their emotions were a little complicated. Dao Yi walked to the black whirlpool and looked at the sword qi. Look. The girls looked at the sword qi. Soon Ah Ming frowned. It's dissipating. Dao Yi nodded. This sword qi is disappearing bit by bit. In other words, the alien dimensional race has already made their move. Ah Ming looked at Dao Yi. Is the seal going to disappear soon? Dao Yi nodded. Very soon. Ah Ming frowned. Immediately. Dao Yi said with smile. It seems like the alien races are still somewhat afraid of Master. Ah Ming said in a deep voice. They have already defeated Master back then. Why do they still need to fear Master? Dao Yi said softly. Although they won, they won. However, Master also stopped their footsteps. Ah Ming nodded. Understood. Dao Yi smiled and said, I will go in for a while. I will leave the Master to you. With that, she turned around and walked towards the black vortex. At this time, Ah Ming suddenly said, what are you going to do? Dao Yi didn't even turn her head. Die. With that, she disappeared into the depths of the black vortex. Ah Ming and the others frowned when they saw that. At this time, Ah Ming was about to enter, but she was stopped by the misfortune law. The misfortune law said in a deep voice, trust her. Ah Ming looked at the black vortex and didn't say anything. The misfortune law said, the most important thing now is to help Master improve. Ah Ming shook her head. Misfortune, forgive me for being blunt, but we can't put all our hopes on Master. In 5 years, even if Master recovers to his peak, what can he do? The misfortune law didn't say anything. Ah Ming said again, what does Dao Yi want to do? The misfortune law shook her head. I also don't know. Ah Ming looked at the black vortex and said softly, I still can't see through her. Among us sisters, she and that guy are the most mysterious. The misfortune law looked at Ah Ming. Back then, Master told us not to hate him. Ah Ming slowly closed her eyes. Meanwhile, the transmigration law suddenly said, based on the current situation, we have no chance of winning. Even if Master recovers to his peak. The life law nodded. Indeed, we have no chance of winning. The misfortune law said softly, trust Dao Yi. Trust Dao Yi. All the women fell silent. Meanwhile, Ah Ming suddenly turned around. In the next moment, she vanished on the spot, and when she appeared again, she was in front of Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian's aura was rising explosively. At this moment, Yi Xian's soul had returned to his body. Meanwhile, the other laws had appeared here as well. All the women were looking at Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes, and the starry sky in an area of 5,000 kilometers around him rippled. Divine Ascension. At this moment, he'd entered Divine Ascension. The biggest difference between Divine Ascension and Mortal Ascension was that after entering Divine Ascension, one's soul would become even stronger. Entering Divine Ascension was the realm of transcendence. Divine Ascension was the realm of transcendence. There was actually a huge difference between the realms of the two. However, the difference in combat strength between the two wasn't that huge. Because if the body was strong enough, it could surpass the soul. Just like before, he could rely on the war god armor and the power of his bloodline to fight against godly realm experts. Meanwhile, Ah Ming suddenly said, how do you feel? Yi Xian looked at Ah Ming. I feel very strong. Ah Ming's brows raised slightly. Want to exchange a few moves? Yi Xian nodded. Ah Ming suddenly vanished on the spot, and Yi Xian immediately stabbed with his sword. Bang! Yi Xian instantly retreated tens of thousands of meters. When he came to a stop, the sword in his hand immediately cracked. After the sword's spirit left, all his swords were ordinary swords now. Xian glanced at the cracked sword in his hand and then he looked at Ming. So strong. Ming glanced at Xian's body. Your body is really good. Xian took a deep breath, feeling somewhat excited. Seeing this, a trace of surprise flashed in Ming's eyes. You don't seem to be discouraged at all. Xian smiled. Why should I be discouraged? You are stronger than me and this is a good thing. Ming was somewhat puzzled. Why? Xian grinned. Because this way I can know my own shortcomings. Shortcomings? Was failure a bad thing? No. Failure was a good thing. Although he was defeated right after breaking through, he wasn't discouraged at all. That was because failure could clear his mind and let him know his shortcomings. Hearing Xian's words, Ming nodded slightly. You surprised me. Xian smiled. Where is Dao Yi? Ming looked at Xian. He went to the alternate dimension. Xian frowned. Went to the alternate dimension? Ming nodded. Xian said in a deep voice, what is she doing there? Ming said, the seal has loosened. She should be going there for this matter. Xian's expression sank. Will there be any danger? Ming nodded. There will be. Xian remained silent. Ming looked at Xian and also didn't speak. Xian suddenly said, I will go find her. With that he turned around and left. Ming stared at Xian. If she is in danger, how are you going to save her? Xian didn't even turn his head. I will commit suicide in the alternate dimension. Everyone will die together. Ming. Soon Xian arrived at the black vortex leading to the alternate dimension. When he saw that the majority of swordsmen's sword chi had dissipated, his expression sank. Even Big Brother's sword chi was dissipating. After a moment of silence, Xian was about to enter. At this time, Ming appeared in front of Xian. Just as Xian was about to speak, Ming said, I will go with you. Xian was stunned. He thought that Ming was here to stop him. Ming said, I also want to go and take a look. Xian nodded. At this time the law of disaster and the others suddenly appeared. Disaster looked at Xian. Are you sure you want to go in? Xian nodded. Disaster said in a deep voice, with your current strength, going in is no different from sending yourself to death. Xian smiled. Roughly what level do I have to cultivate to in order to not send myself to death? Disaster was silent. Even if Xian cultivated to the peak state of his previous life, he still wouldn't be able to defeat the alternate dimension. Xian smiled. I also want to work hard and use my own strength to change everything, but I know that it's not realistic. However, I won't give up. I will do my best. If I still can't defeat the alternate dimension in the end, then I deserve to die. I admit it. Humans could lose. However, they had to do their best because once they did their best, even if they lost, they wouldn't regret it. How could there be perfection in life? It was enough to do one's best. He could clearly see that even if he cultivated for another 10 years, he still wouldn't be able to defeat the alternate dimension. And the alternate dimension definitely wouldn't give him 10 years. There was no difference between entering now and entering later. After a moment of silence, Disaster said, We will go with you. Xian nodded. No need, you guys stay here. I'm afraid the alternate dimension will use other methods to enter this world, so I need you guys to guard this place. Disaster looked at Xian. Promise us that you will come back alive. Xian smiled. I don't dare to promise. After saying that, he and Ming turned around and entered the black vortex. Right after Xian and Ming entered the black vortex, a woman suddenly appeared. The expressions of calamity and the others instantly changed violently when they saw this woman. This woman was none other than the woman in a plain dress. The sudden appearance of the woman in a plain dress caused Disaster and the others to be slightly stunned. Why did this woman suddenly appear here? The woman in a plain dress paid no attention to Disaster and the others. She just stood in front of the black vortex. Disaster glanced at the woman in a plain dress. What are you going to do? The woman in a plain dress looked at the black vortex. Wait for him to come out. Disaster hesitated for a moment and then said, Why don't you go in and look for him? The woman in a plain dress glanced at Disaster. Does it have anything to do with you? Disaster. At this moment the law of life suddenly said, Thank you, Senior, for not killing me. Actually, Daoist couldn't save life in front of the woman in a plain dress. At that time, the woman in a plain dress had noticed that Daoist was saving life. However, she hadn't stopped Daoist, nor had she killed the law of life. Otherwise, even Daoist wouldn't have been able to save the law of life. The woman in a plain dress didn't respond to the law of life. The law of life's life wasn't important to her at all. She could kill him. Even if she didn't. Meanwhile, Disaster said, "What if he can't come out?" The woman in a plain dress remained expressionless. "Then I'll go in." Disaster was slightly curious. "What for?" The woman in a plain dress glanced at Disaster. "Go in and look at the stars." Disaster.